But to Pashat know what the Rebbe's views on all kinds of topics, everyone has to have a quiz learning the Rebbe's Igris. You have to know. You have to know.
If you've been enjoying this podcast, please like and subscribe so that others can enjoy it as well. In addition, if you've benefited in any way from Among Chassidim podcast and would like to give something back, you can do so today at derher.org/donate. I'm Yassi Kamen. Welcome to Among Chassidim by Derher, an ongoing farbrengen about life as a chassid, our vibrant connection with the Rebbe, and inspired living shaped by the way he teaches us each and every day. This episode is dedicated to Nishmas Harav Sadia ben Rav Mordechai Olav Shalom Dahan and the Refuah Shlema for Chana Bas Nechamed Dina by Shaul and Shendi Dahan. Inspire your friends to join their fellow Yidden all across the globe who are flocking to letters from Menachem.com and fulfilling the Rebbe's takana for every single Yid to have an specific Torah. Share letters from Menachem.com to bring this important takana of the Rebbe for Achdus of the entire Klal Yisrael. This additional effort should be for Aliyas HaNeshama of Atamim, Menachem Mendel ben Harav Avram Asher Halevi Sheyicheh, a young Shliach who passed away tragically a short while ago at the age of 17. Encourage anyone who does not yet have a letter in the Sifrei Torah HaKlalim to visit lettersfrommenachem.com to bring more light and unity into the world as the Rebbe inspires and instructs. Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Schmerling, how are you?
Aleichem Shalom, Baruch Hashem, Haidul Hashem Ki Tov. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you for making the time to talk. And it's not we're not strangers, but I don't know if our conversations were on the topics that I would like to cover, or that you would like to cover. So maybe this will be different. So my first question I want to ask you is, I know you're from Switzerland. I know Schmerling, Switzerland, that's connected. I know there's a big mishpacha, but I don't know much about it, where they came from, how they ended up there, v'chulu. So maybe you can start like that. How does that sound?
Yeah, sounds like a plan. So my elder Zayde, my great-grandfather, Rabbi Schmerling, who was born in Kalisk in Russia, so Lubavitcher Mishpacha going back, Deiris till the time of the Alter Rebbe, moved from Russia to Switzerland around Tafresh Samach in the early 1900s. Had a brach from the Rebbe Rashab to move to Switzerland. We don't know much pratim about it, but he moved to Switzerland and he started a panos over there. He had a little store, grocery store, sold different food, and he started to produce Chalav Yisrael cheese. So this early 1900s, there are ads of Schmerling cheese already from 1910, even before. So mamish in the early 1900s, he started to produce Schmerling cheese. That is, he kept a kesher with Beis Harav, even when he was in Switzerland. Like I mentioned before, he came from a Lubavitcher Mishpacha. Actually, he writes in his siddur, in the back of his siddur, he wrote some family details, dates, yartzites, and different things. So he writes over there, we don't know the exact family tree all the way up, but he writes that we are descendants from Rabbi Yossele the Magid's, Rabbi Socha Ber Kabilniker. Rabbi Socha Ber Kabilniker was a Malamed of the Alter Rebbe. Later he became a Chas of the Alter Rebbe, and his son, Rabbi Yossel, was a Shadar of the Alter Rebbe, and he was an uncle of the Tzemach Tzedek. He married the sister of Reb Shalom Shachner, Tzemach Tzedek's father. So he's called the Vetter Yossele. Rabbi Yossele the Magid's. The Magid's, because his father was the Magid of Lubavitch, so we are descendants from them. And he also writes that his father is Mimishpachas Admo de Kopust. Now we don't know exactly how are we related to the Kopust Rebbe, but the Rebbe wrote to two Chassidim, to Rebbe Shem Tov and to Rebbe Ephraim Wolf in the 1950s, They traveled to Zurich, to Switzerland, and the Rebbe writes to them, you're for sure going to meet, or you should meet up with my grandfather. That's already Rebbe Bendit, the son of Rabbi Yitzchak, who was here a few times. He's also a mechutin in Mishpachas Beis Horav. So there's a Mishpacha Sheiches.
So this is not the Schmerling from Eretz Yisrael that's related to the Rebbe.
The Schmerlings in Eretz Yisrael, like I mentioned before, the Schmerling family goes back Chassidim of the Alte Rebbe already. One branch of the family went to Eretz Yisrael in the time of the Mittel Rebbe. Actually, one of the Einiklach of the Mittel Rebbe married a Schmerling, so there are numerous Tzitzoim Schmerling in Eretz Yisrael, including Zalma Schmerling, who used to come to the Rebbe, say Tillim, Shana Rebbe, brought many Bichlach to the Rebbe. Every Lubavitcher Machzor has it, you open up, Bichel Lechlecha Schmerling. So that's a maimah that was from one of these Bichlach. So we might be distant relatives of that branch of the Schmerlings, but these are the Eretz Yisraeli Schmerlings. We were from those that stayed back in Russia and were Chassidim of the Rebbeim, Ledereseim in Russia. My Elter Zayde moved to Switzerland. So
in that Schmerling, when it says that they're related to Beis Harav, that's because of the Mitzvah Rebbe.
Because they are Tzitzoim from the Alter Rebbe. Right. They are straight Tzitzoim. Our family apparently is not Tzitzoim. It's Meduik in the Rebbe's Loshen, Mechutanim in Mishpachas Beis Horav. So either because we are Einiklach of Rabbi Yossel the Maggid, who was an uncle of the Tzemach Tzedek, or because of the other thing that my Elter Zayde writes, that his father is Mishpachas Admo de Kopus, but we don't know exactly what that means. How are we related to Admo de Kopus? I assume it's some type of marriage relationship. Somebody over there married into the Mishpach of the Kopus the Rebbes. We don't know the details. So if anybody out there is good at it, try to figure it out. Can't. But apparently the Rebbeim knew about this relationship, and this time they knew better, but was closer in years. We don't know the details. My Elter Zayde didn't write the details. That's why we don't know.
So your Elter Zayde was the start of the cheese, which still exists. That's also the chocolates?
No, he didn't start the chocolate. After he passed away, my Zayde added on the chocolate, his son, Baruch Bendit. So he was in Switzerland, a lone Lubavitcher. Like there weren't any other Anash that I know of in those years.
There was always a From Kehillah in Switzerland? That's why he went there?
Yeah. There was a Yekische Kehillah and a Chassidische Kehillah. My Zayde davened in the Yekische Kehillah. He was a Chassid, but for him it made no difference. The Polish Chassidim or the Yekische Kehillah, neither is where he is at home, but he lived down the block from the Yekische Shul. So,
but he grew up
davened there.
He grew up in Switzerland.
My Zayde did. My Elter Zayde moved to Switzerland, right. And his house was literally down the block from the Yekische Big Shul. So he davened there. He also was a Baal Koire there. But he kept up the kesher with Beis Horav. My Elter Zayde's sister married a second cousin, and they lived in Riga. When my grandfather became a bacher, so my Elter Zayde wanted to send him really to Atvatska, whatever, Varsha, where the yeshiva was then. And my Elter Babbe, she came from a Litvische mishpacha, so she objected, because who's going to look after him, sending a little boy, a 13-year-old, Lemerchakim to Poland, who's going to look after him? She had relatives in Telz. Let's send him to Telz. And she won. They sent my grandfather to Telz. But for Yontif, he went to Riga, so his uncle, who lived in Riga, took him to the Friedige Rebbe. So my grandfather saw the Friedige Rebbe still in Riga. And, even when he was in Telz, there were a few Lubavitcher Bachrim in Telz. The Rosh Hashiva actually...
So Shornel Atvatsk wasn't the Teim Chatumim in Poland.
Right.
And Friedige Rebbe was in Riga, there was no Atvatsk.
Right, it wasn't Atvatsk. Wherever the yeshiva was...
but he started the yeshiva already.
Correct. Good. I didn't think of the exact years. You are right. He came to tell the Rosh Hashiva over there, learned Chassidus. The Rosh Hashiva had an appreciation and told my grandfather, it's coming up to Yutas Kislev in a few days. There are the Reich brothers, who are also Lubavitchers, go to their Achsanya, the Bachim, there was no dormitory, the Bachim lived in different places, where they are staying, there for sure is going to be some type of Fabrengen. And your father probably wants you to go to that Fabrengen.
Yeah.
Tells, Shabbat tells.
Who was the Rosh Hashiva?
Rav Bloch. Yeah. Anyways, so even when he was learning in Tells, but he davened our Nusach, Lubavitcher Tfilin, he knew the Sheiches, a Lubavitcher family did the same, but still, he didn't learn in Temchet Mimim. He shaved his beard, and all his years. He wasn't like a typical Lubavitcher, but he knew the Sheiches, of course, connected to Lubavitch. The Frierdiker Rebbe came here to America and right away tried to save whoever he could from Europe. Everybody knows, of course, the gewaltige work that the Frierdiker Rebbe put in to bring the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin here. But it wasn't only them. The Frierdiker Rebbe tried any Chassidim. So the Frierdiker Rebbe made a list of Chassidim and their families to try to arrange visas to bring them to America. We didn't know this, what I just said. What we knew in the family all the years was that my Elter Zayd and his family lived in Zurich in Switzerland, and one day he gets a phone call from the American embassy that the visas are ready. And what visas? He didn't apply for visas. Rabbi Schmerling sent visas for your family to go to America. Okay? The problem was that my grandfather was drafted in the army. This is 1941, the war. And while...
Which army?
The Swiss army.
I thought the Swiss were not involved.
The Swiss weren't in the war, but they didn't know that in advance.
To their drafting.
So they had the army ready, just in case Hitler will invade. We're ready. So my grandfather was a soldier. He was drafted. He couldn't leave Switzerland. My Elter Baba said, she's not leaving her son back, going to America. She doesn't want to hear of it. My Elter Zayd said, the Rebbe schickt visas. The Rebbe sent visas. He got to go. So they made they decided that him and his daughter, who was married to someone, Avram Schnall, not a Swiss citizen, and therefore he wasn't drafted to the army, they'll go. And then, after the war, the rest of the family will join. They actually did that. They came to America, and so Stam, interesting now, I'll tell you in a moment, the Frierdiker Rebbe's Yachas, but he ended up passing away in Tafshin Hay, 1945. So after the war, there was nothing for my Elter Baba and my Zayde to move to America for anymore. My grandfather came for the first Yartzeit in Tafshin Vav, 1946 to New York, the Yartzeit. He was by the Frierdiker Rebbe, along Yechidus, down for the Amid. But
so his son-in-law passed away.
My grandfather's father, Rabbi Schmerling, passed away here in America. Not the son-in-law. No, son-in-law lived for many years.
Okay, fine.
So the Frierdiker Rebbe, I heard the following from numerous Chassidim. The family knew about it, and I heard this from Rabbi Yisrael Kozheminski, Olav Hashalom. I heard it from a label Poizner, Olav Hashalom, passed away recently, that the Frierdiker Rebbe said, when my great-grandfather came to America, Mashiach will come, we'll say L'chaim, we need Schmerling cheese, and make sure to have cheese ready for when Mashiach comes. In the Sichos, it's not printed. In recent years, Baruch Hashem, the Eibusha helps. There's churros. Every family prints churros for Simchas. So one family printed a Hanoche of the Verbringen of Yud Kislev Tavshin Beis. And over there in the Hanoche, it's a typed Hanoche. It says, I guess between the Siches, somebody pointed out to the Frierdiker Rebbe, there is Schmerling from Schweiz. And the Frierdiker Rebbe responded, they should tell him. I guess he stood further away or something like that. The Frierdiker Rebbe was difficult to speak, but the Frierdiker Rebbe said, they should tell him, he should prepare a lot of kez, because soon Mashiach will come, and was to verbeißen.
Yeah.
It's printed. Now we have the exact. Now we know when it happened, and
it's famous that the Rebbe that there was Schmerling chocolate by the Rebbe, but I never heard about the cheese by the Frierdiker Rebbe. So that's a chiddush.
Okay. Yeah. So my Eltazeder started the cheese, and so we knew in the family the story was the visas and this and that. In recent years, Reb Shalom Ber Levin printed the Teilas Chabad, Poland, Lite, Latvia. And over there in the back, there are copies of that Reshime that the Frierdiker Rebbe made, whom to try to save. And in that Reshime, my Eltazeder, my Eltababbe, all the children's names. So, obviously the majority of the people on the Reshime weren't saved. And but my Eltazeder's family, they did get saved. That was my Zayde started the chocolate. But interesting, you mentioned that you didn't know about the cheese, you knew about the chocolate. In Tavshin and Aleph, my grandfather came almost every year for the yahrzeit of his father. The yahrzeit is Tes Iyar, so my Eltazeder is buried here. There's a famous picture of the Rebbe standing by the Tzion of the Frierdiker Rebbe before the oil was built, right in the beginning in Tavshin Yud. So there's 3 matzeves visible, like in the background. One of them is my Eltazeder. He's buried 2 rows behind the oil. So my Zayde came almost every year, always was in Yechidus, had Kshorim with the Rebbe throughout all the years. In Tavshin and Aleph, when he came, that was when I already learned here. I was in Ola Torah, I was Bacha, I took care of my grandfather, my grandmother, took them around, helped my grandfather get a seat by the Verbringen. I was his bodyguard a little bit. We went by dollars, and first went my grandfather, who wished the Rebbe Mazel Tov zum Tzadik Yor. That you darf wissen, the Rebbe entered Shnas HaTzadik. So my grandfather told the Rebbe Mazel Tov zum Tzadik Yor, which I didn't know at the time. My grandfather already had cancer at the time. He didn't say a word to the Rebbe about that. He didn't ask. All he said was Mazel Tov dem Rebbe zum Tzadik Yor. And the Rebbe gave him another $1 for the kez. Not for the chocolate, for the kez. And then my grandmother went by, and the Rebbe gave her also $1 for the kez. And I'm the next in line. And both my grandmother and Rebbe Leibel Groner both point to me, informing the Rebbe, das ist ein Einikel. And my grandmother, das ist unser Einikel. And Leibel said, das ist ein Einikel. So in a split second, many times when people went by dollars, family, business, and this, so the Rebbe would sometimes tell also the children, you also help out, you're also part of it, for you helping your grandparents. So, 2 things. First of all, my father wasn't part of the business he didn't join my grandfather's business. My uncle, Al Hashem, did, but my father did his own parnasse. And also, as a bacher, I wasn't looking for a bracha for the kez.
Right.
Yeah, so the Rebbe gave me $1, and Chassid Reshamayim belandet. So I'm still working on being Mekayim that bracha, verstehst du? It's a bracha for Riches Yomim.
Right.
To be a Chassid Reshamayim belandet.
You're definitely not doing the kez.
Definitely not doing the kez. But you see that the Rebbe mentioned the kez. So everybody knows, and it's true, the Rebbe did eat the Schmerling chocolate. The Rebbe ate the bittersweet noblesse, the one with the horse on it. That was the one.
Was it sugar-free?
I don't know, sugar-free. I don't think it existed then, sugar-free. Maybe In the later years, they made it also sugar-free. Ich weiß nicht, but the bittersweet, noblesse chocolate, that's what the Rebbe ate. So the Rebbe could have told my grandparents for the chocolate. The Rebbe said for the kez. So, Bescheid in Tafshin and Aleph, this was after Chav Ches Nissen. This was shortly after. This was Yudalad Iyar, I believe, was the date. And as a Koch, Mashiach, the Rebbe was also there, Yud Kislev Tafshin based by the Fabring, and the vier Rebbe said, man darf zustellen, Kez, als Mashiach wird sein, kommt bald sein, auf was zu verbeißen. So maybe because of that, I don't know. That was a irrigation.
Right. But I mean, it's a good hergish. I'm saying the Rebbe is, attributing it to the Fidik Rebbe and Mashiach. Yeah. Okay, so what about you yourself? So
I grew up. So to continue just that hemshech over here. So my grandfather, because he went to a Litvish yeshiva, still had a shaykhis, as Lubavitch had a shaykhis Rebbe. He always came yichidus every year, and he had interesting yichidus. Now I don't know if I want to get into saying all kinds of stories. Maybe later if there's extra time. But when his children grew up, he decided to send them to Litvish yeshivas too. The preconceived notions, Chassidish yeshivas, lernt man nicht so good. Dafkin Litvish yeshivas, you learn. Okay. So he sent my uncle, my father, to Litvish yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael, in Switzerland, in Luzern, in Eretz Yisrael, Hebron, Ponevezh, different yeshivas. But while they were in Eretz Yisrael, they learned Tanya by Reb Nachum Goldschmidt. They went to Fabringens, different Fabringens. There was a Yid in Bnei Brak, the label Zalmanov. These Chassidim had a huge hashpah on both my uncle and my father, to the extent that both of them, after the chasna, grew a beard, put on a sertuk, and became full-fledged Lubavitchers. They sent their children already to Lubavitch yeshivas. So that was already back to the roots.
It's a Lashon. Yeah, I was thinking of a different Lashon, but yeah, that's good. Whatever.
It never went that far. Like I said, there was a kesher all the years. Then my grandfather came every year to Yechidus. He wasn't a chassid, so he would sit in Yechidus and talk to Rebbe, Fabring, Shmuz. A story that I heard from my grandfather during that visit in Tafshin and Aleph. When he was here, he told me that he was in Yechidus, and the Rebbe told him, maybe add a new business to your business. Add another line, another. So he asked, can I say a story? In response, the Rebbe said, sicher. He's like, sure. So he said that there were two Jews who, let's call them Reuven and Shimon. Reuven suggested to Shimon, become a shutif. Let's do a business, b'shutfis. And Shimon said, you know what, let's go to the Chafetz Chaim. And if he thinks it's a gleiche Zach, well, I'll ask him. They went to Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim asked, do you have a tzamavar? You have like a kettle, hot water urn? Like, yeah, like where this is going. How many glasses of tea do you get out of that urn? Let's say 20. So the Chafetz Chaim said, well, what do you think? You're going to add another faucet to the urn. You're going to get out more than 20 glasses of tea. So basically the message was, you're not going to make more panos. Whatever is destined. And, you have your urn. Adding a shutiv is not going to give you more glass of tea. It's nish kedai. So my grandfather answered this to the Rebbe as in response to the Rebbe's suggestion to open another line of business. But Teich Kedei Dibur, that he finished the story, the Rebbe responded, I'm not talking about another faucet, I'm talking about another urn. Red nicht wegen noch a kran, red wegen noch a samavar. So he open up other lines of business. I don't know exactly what was then. He started importing wine from Eretz Yisrael. He started to import all kinds of kosher goods from America, kedem crackers and all kinds of stuff to Europe. He did other lines of business, and he made good panasa from that. Shleimah. So, they always had, they kept the shaykhs throughout the years. But my father and also my uncle, they learned in Köln in Eretz Yisrael, but then they moved to Switzerland. My uncle joined my grandfather's business. My father did his own business. But they were Chassidim. They started coming to the Rebbe regularly. My father actually, as a bacher, he worked for some time here in New York by Hirschel Chitrik. So he already was by the Rebbe in Yechidus, Tafshin Chav Zayin, Chav Ches. He was here for a tkufe, Farbrengens by the Rebbe. So he already had a shaykhs like that, mamish direct shaykhs with the Rebbe himself as well. But after the Chasna, they came to Switzerland. So while there were Chassidische Balabatim, business people, but they viewed themselves as, not shluchim, but just every chassid has to make a sviva, has to hafotzas hamayones, hafotzas hayadus.
And there was no Lubavitcher.
There was no
presence.
shliach yet. There was no shliach yet. The Mendel Rosenfeld came to Switzerland in Tafshin Mem Beis, if I remember correctly. So in the Lameds, when my father and my uncle raised the families in Zurich, they were the Lubavitchers. There's also the Moshe Lazar Rappaport, another Lubavitcher. So they started a lot of things. So happens to be that my father was the address of Chabad Lubavitch, Switzerland, meaning on our mailbox, it said my father's name, it said his business name, and it also said Chabad Lubavitch, Schweiz. And Moshe and the Rebbe did Miftzeh Kashrus. The Rebbe gave money for shluchim. It was for shluchim. The Rebbe promised then that anyone who is ready to kasher the kitchen will pay them part of the expenses. And symbolically, the Rebbe gave different people money for Miftzeh Kashrus. The Rebbe gave my father a star of 100 Swiss francs. So
I have to check. There's I saw this Jewish catalog. I think it's called the Jewish Catalog.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a book about Judaism. Today there's like a series for dummies. Maybe it would be like Judaism for dummies. Like so there's like a few pages about Lubavitch, and there's pictures of the Rebbe, and it lists all of the Lubavitch representatives in the world.
Yeah,
I was looking through the list. This is like in the early Lameds. A lot of them are not shluchim. They're right. Lubavitcher people. The representatives of Lubavitch, and so I have to check.
I'll tell you more than that. In the Tzaddiks, when the Hatomim came out. So today you have Hatomim printed all in one book. The original booklets, in the back, there were ads. They're not printed in the books that we buy today in Kahas. And also on the back cover, it had a list of representatives of Lubavitch, so to speak, where you can get Hatomim booklets in other countries. Mm-hmm. So in Switzerland, it was my Alter Zayde, Rabbi Schmerling. It was his address. That's where you get Hatomims in Switzerland. So I guess it was already in the family. Yubes Psukim, Shnas HaChinuch. So my father printed like the same booklet of Yubes Psukim, like here in New York, with the drawings. I think it was Muchnik drawings in it, and had like a paragraph written about each pasuk. So my father, maybe my mother, together they translated it into German. They printed it, and in the back, every child who learns the Yubes Psukim Baal Peh should send in and contact and get a prize or something. Also, my parents' address. That was like, but it wasn't only my father. It was my father and my uncle and also Moshe Lazar Rappaport. They did every Lag Baimer. They did a huge parade for children. One year they did it on a ship. I fell into the water of the Zurich Lake. It was a whole pasha. Before it started, we went in the morning early to set up, and my father had to go, and I gedreht, and I fell into the water. I knew how to swim, but it was fun. Anyways, so although they were Pashat Balabatim, and they kept on begging the Rebbe in Yechidus, both my father and my uncle, numerous times to send the Shliach. Because, we're business light. We don't have an official Shliach. The Rebbe had his reasons why he didn't want to send initially. Eventually, the Rebbe sent a Shliach. And they were Chassidische Balabatim who were Eisik in Kol HaMivtzoim, in Shiur Chassidus, Yutes Kislev, every time they made a big Farbrengen. So, growing up in such an environment, also us children always felt we represent Lubavitch. Like we went to a school, the Jewish school in Zurich was a school for alle Kreisen. Chassidische, Litwische, Vishnitzer Chassidim, Gerer Chassidim, Alexander Chassidim, Belzer Chassidim. Like I had a Melamed, a Belzer Chassid. A different year I had a Melamed, a Vishnitzer Chassid. And I had a Litwische Melamed. Like over the years we had all, it's like Achdus of Klal Yisrael over there. All the Frume Yidden, it's still so like today.
There's only one school.
One big school. Alle Frume Yidden learn in that school. So being Lubavitch Chassidim, and we always, similar to what Shluchim's children feel, we represent. We're not just, we happen to be the Lubavitch Chassidim. No, as Lubavitchers, you actually represent something, and you have to do hafotze. I remember when the Rebbe came out with Sefer Torah L'Yaldei Yisrael, my father sat me down Sunday. You have to call all your classmates. Got all of them to sign up for the letter in Sefer Torah. Then we went big. All the children in the entire school, the boys' school and the girls' school, we signed up everyone to Eis B'Sefer Torah. Yeah. So we weren't Shluchim, aber was heißt? The Rebbe sagt. That's the atmosphere I grew up in was a Chassidische atmosphere in that way. We also had numerous Chassidim that just came through our house. They stayed in our house. Different shadarim, Yidden, fundraisers for meisters. So, but these were Chassidische Yidden. And as a child growing up, reading the Yiddische Heim and Schmussen mit Kinder, reading Heischke Dubravsky's descriptions of Farbrengens in Samarkand. So I had a very vivid imagination. So these Chassidim, and they were Taka Chassidische Yidden. A Yid like Reb Kusha Kalmanson from Brunwa. He came, stayed in our house, fundraised for the yeshiva, but just to see him daven, to see him bench at our kitchen table, such dignity. He was he held himself with such a, he looked like a ish mura me'am. Had the mashpia in Nachler, Michal Mishulovin. He also came to our house. He stayed a couple of days, whatever. He was just to see his face can machine werden ayre shamayim. But to say this, the way he davened, the way he learned, it was just geschmack. And these Yidden interacted with us children. We were children, but they told us Chiddushei Maises and had a major impact on our growing up with the Chassidische outlook. There was a Yid, Rabbi Shmuel Gorevich, Rabbi Icha the Masmit's son. My wife's uncle, Lazar Gorevich from Ten Heights, is his son. Rabbi Shmuel lived in Lud, and he also went around to fundraise. So, he came every year through Switzerland. He stayed in our house. So I don't remember the story from then. I heard the story later on that he passed through, stayed in our house, and then he would go to other places in Europe, maybe England, whatever. Then he would come to the Rebbe, and then he would have Yechidus, and then he would go back to Eretz Yisrael. One year, he calls my father from New York if he can come again to stay in our house on the way back too. My father said, sure, B'kavod Gadol. It was unusual because usually we're like, what are you coming again? He's not coming to fundraise again. Okay, but he didn't ask questions. You want to come? Gesundheit? Anytime. He comes back to Switzerland. And this is Achsidische der Herr. Mamish Achsidische der Herr. why did he come back? He was in Yechidus by the Rebbe. And he gave the Rebbe a report of his travels, everything that happened. And the Rebbe reads in his report that he stayed by Akiva Schmerling in Zurich. The Rebbe asks him, was macht in Parnasse? My father was having a hard time. And my father had written to the Rebbe, and I don't know what time before my father was in Yechidus. So he probably told the Rebbe that he's having a hard time. And so the Rebbe saw my father's name. He asked Reb Shmuel, was macht in Parnasse? How is he doing financially? So Reb Shmuel said, es kann sein besser. It could be better. The Rebbe gave a krechts. And then the Rebbe gave a bracha to my father, to Shmuel Gorevich in Chidus. The Rebbe soll geben, Parnasse, bekovid, b'mnuche, b'archove. So Reb Shmuel could have called my father and told this to him on the phone. He felt that would not be the right way to go about this. He changed his ticket to come through Switzerland to tell it to my father in person. No, das achsidische der Herr. Avos Yisrael von Achasid.
Yeah.
So that's the avir that I grew up.
Right.
I grew up seeing all kinds of shluchim that also came to our house. Rebbe Schmerling, Garelik, Rebbe Bornstein from Bologna.
Why were they coming?
Because Italy is neighboring Switzerland. And while you were able to get already kosher stuff in Italy, but in Switzerland was a bit more established. So definitely all the goods that you can get by Schmerlings in the warehouse, the chocolate and the cheese and all the imported stuff, that you can get better in Switzerland. Maybe they had other reasons why they came occasionally, I don't know, to meet different people. I was a child. But I remember
the stories.
Rabbi Schmerling was like a dmuz. I met the first Siyama Rambam in Zurich. Rabbi Schmerling was a guest speaker. It's a 3-hour train ride. But he came with his son, Moishele.
It's the famous story with Gershon Mendel.
With the Sri Deish.
That was in Switzerland. Yeah, he was speaking at an event.
That's before my time.
I understand.
He passed away before I was born. I believe the Sri Deish.
I'm saying I understand. There was a connection.
Yeah. So in the early years, Mamish, of course, my Zayde used to send packages to Garelik in Italy. There was a shaykhis. The mishpachas had a shaykhis. But for me as a kid, seeing these shluchim, I remember Bornstein brought me an Italian, the Chabad over there made a pen that had the timetables. You would turn the pen, had the timetables. I knew my timetables and I learned maths in school, but it was cute.
I don't know what you're talking about because
it had We Want Mashiach Now on it in Italian.
I only know calculators. I don't know what a timetable is.
It was very, seeing these chassidim, it infused the home with chassidish geschmack. I'll tell you, David Nachshon passed through our house also numerous times. He also was fundraising for the tanking. So I remember the kid. I don't remember Lamed Ches when the Rebbe wasn't well. I was a little kid.
How old are you? When were you born?
I was born in Lamed Daled, Yudalet Kislev. And so Lamed Ches, I was a 4-year-old kid. So I can't really remember. But I do vaguely remember that the Rebbe wasn't well, and the Simcha, the Rebbe Baruch Hashem is better. But a while later, I don't remember if it was Tafshim Mem or Mem Aleph. David Nachshon was in the house, and Bichlal, David Nachshon was a very good friend of my father's then, and he, I don't know, now too, but I say then not Loitzi, but I don't think that they saw each other recently, but I saw the Chassidish Varmkai, like he came into the house, they hugged each other. I've never seen a Chassidish kush before like that. It was David Nachshon where I saw that. And, I said something, I don't remember what I said. I mentioned the Rebbe. So David told me, the Rebbe soll gesund sein. You mentioned the Rebbe's name, the Rebbe soll gesund sein. This was more mudgish as I'm sure that Chassidim said the Rebbe soll gesund sein alle Jahren. But especially
it
was after Lamed Ches, it was more murgish, and to correct the child, to tell him, no, you got to say the Rebbe soll gesund sein.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's...
So this was all before I ever came to the Rebbe. Yeah.
But your father was going
My
to the
father
Rebbe
was
during-
going... Actually, my father's business caused him to be in New York pretty frequently. In later years, it was like once a month, mamish, like all the time. In my earlier years growing up, it wasn't that frequent, but still, it was a few times a year that he was here. And every time he came, of course, he didn't come just for the business. He always was by the Rebbe. He didn't usually stay for Shabbos, but if it was a weekday Farbringen, and sometimes he stayed for Shabbos. So I remember he would come back, he would share something. I remember when he came back, and he gathered all of us kids at the kitchen table, that the Rebbe spoke about an important Indian, not to have tamene animals. So go to your rooms and go through all your toys and tchotchkes and any non-kosher animals, bring it here, and we're going to get rid of them. So I remember that when, Anaya Yiroi von Rebbe and Eimer Ve'ese. Bechlal, my father had this big koch in the Rebbe Siches. Mamish, he would sit by the Shabbos table. For us kids, it was a little bit challenging, and I don't suggest everybody do that, but he would take out a Siches Kodesh and read through an entire Siche, like a long Siche. And my father would do that, like with the tune, the way the Rebbe said a Siche. The only other person I saw talking that way was Mullah Azimov.
Right.
That the Chazer a Siche, with the tune like the Rebbe is saying the Siche. He would sit after the soup, before the next course, Siches Kodesh, we understood Yiddish well, and, we tried to understand, and, But the Hanoch, Mechazet it's da Siche von Rebbe. Likute Siches, he was Baki in Likute Siches. I remember by my bar mitzvah, I got from my uncle a set, Chov Dalet Krochim Likute Siches were out then. In my father's study, he had all the Krochim, and every time a new Krach would come out, like I said, by my bar mitzvah, it was 24 Krochim. But all the years before that, every year, another krach came out. So every time father would come back from New York with the new krach, a ganze simche. But he also had in his closet, in his study, the booklet, because till the new krach comes out,
Right.
the booklets, we got the booklets in the mail, usually like a week or two later. But didn't matter. The same koch. It's 2 weeks after the Pasha. Who cares? My father would go through the sichim, the ganzen koch, and the Rashi Siches, he would teach us the Rashi Siches. He would go through with us the Rashi and this.
Also by the Shabbos table?
No, that's not by the Shabbos table. That's Tamazeh. And that was... So we grew up with that koch in Rashi Siches. I still have a koch in Rashi Siches. How did I bestate it? But the Rashi Siches especially, because that was also more shaykh. He would ask us the questions and like teach us the Rashi by learning the Rashi like that. Before my bar mitzvah, a year before the bar mitzvah, in the summer, always in the summer, we would go to the Swiss mountains for a few weeks, vacationing. And Chagav, one year, my father gets a letter. He would forward his mail from the city to the mountains. His business, whatever. He needs the mail to be forwarded. One day, he gets a letter from the Rebbe. That was a bislach. I mean, he got numerous letters from the Rebbe over the years, but I don't remember what it was, on what occasion. But the Rebbe wrote, Anun Beis, Betach Isik Bechol HaMivtzoim. He's getting this in vacation time. Okay, man darf sich nehmen, man darf dann etwas Mivtzoim. I remember that. But, so a year before my bar mitzvah, he started teaching me the pilpul, was ich gehe chazren. Maimer, chazren and Maimer, but got a chazer also pilpul. He didn't tell me where this pilpul is from initially, the sicha from the Rebbe and this and that. He started teaching me a mechilte, a sheiltes, a gemore, a rambam, and I had to learn all these mekeres that this balpeh, that I should be able to say it word for word, the exact sources, and then like questions and answers, and he told me it's a sicha from the Rebbe. I give you the sicha? No, he didn't give me the sicha. We learned this for a few months, going through the whole sicha as a
So, Bachal, your father...
on the minion.
Your father's a Yid Alamdan, sounds like.
A ben Teira, a leme Teira.
Leme Teira, okay.
Mechavi Teira, no, he likes learning. And so we went through the Sikha, and only once I knew the whole back and forth, Kedaboy, then he gave me the Sikha. It's like the Sikhas was Chanun Beis, Chelik Yutes, was Chanun Beis. About Shal Yad before Shal Reish, and then you Chelitz, your first Chelitz, Shal Reish, and then Shal Yad. And he only gave me the Sikha to learn how it's Bepnimis in Yanim, that you can learn already Pashut from the Rebbe straight. Then I already learned the whole Sikha from inside as well. But I knew that Sikha as a mit Hand und Fies. A month before my Bar Mitzvah, he took me to Rav Breish. Rav Breish is a big Pesach, a Welt Pesach, and he was the Rav in the Polish, in the Chassidische Kehille in Zurich. That's where we davened. We didn't daven in the Yakisha. We lived closer to that shul. We davened in Beis Chabad on Shabbos, but during the week and Friday night when the Chabadas took in Shabbos early, so we davened in the late minyan with Rav Breish. So Rav Breish was like a Rav in the Kehille. So my father took me to invite the Rav to the Bar Mitzvah and to chazer the Sikha, to chazer my pilpul to the Rav, preview of the pilpul. I was a minigig. People used to do it by the Rebbe. It's nicht dieselbe Sache.
The Rebbe
used to ask. Yeah. But it was on the Hoga. So I chazered the whole pilpul, but my father told him, without the beer bepnimis in yonim. That don't chazer by him. That you'll say by the Bar Mitzvah. He'll be by the Bar Mitzvah too. He'll hear it then. Now, only the nigla part. So, he was very impressed, and he asked a question, like, was a hecha timtze of, I don't remember exactly, like, gavre chefze, how can there be tefillin only a chefze, without a gavre? So I didn't know what to say. My father said, if Alubavitch should put some tefillin with another yid, maybe it was like more like in a joking manner. But then when he came to the Bar Mitzvah, so he had doch schon gehört die ganze Teure. I chazed it by the Bar Mitzvah for 20 minutes, the whole Sikha, which before I started, my father used the whole Bar Mitzvah as another opportunity for Hafatzas HaMayonis. For example, to teach the Eilam, the Hira from the Rebbe, not to be mafsik in middle of a pilpul. Because I prepared a long sikha to chazer, and everybody's going to start singing after 5 minutes. So he said,
isn't there a story with Yishver about that?
Yeah, when my brother-in-law Levi got married in Tavshin Aleph, so
Yishver is Rabbi Binyamin Klein, the Rebbe's masker, for our listeners.
Right.
So, but when Levi got married,
so the Rebbe asked my Shver about if Chazar Chassidus, if they interrupted, and the Rebbe said, so my Shver was also surprised. The Rebbe said, "Oh, it's not to interrupt," but the Rebbe said that they should
say it again.
Also do the minig. So the way to do it is, after you finish, you start over again, and then you can interrupt.
That's the makar to do that.
Yeah,
it's that story.
Yeah, because the Rebbe told him to be mefarsim it, so he typed it up and put it all over 770.
Yes, that's where it comes from.
Yeah, that.
So not everyone knows about it. When you finish the Mayim, you should start it again.
Correct.
Then interrupt. Yeah. It became the Minig Yisrael.
Correct.
What's the idea? Is that
the original interrupting is because of that.
Right.
But what's the Indian to the Avrazai? The Rebbe hat gesagt, that's it.
So back to Bar Mitzvah, so your father...
So he said this here from the Rebbe, that Divrei Torah, you're not allowed to be mafsik Divrei Torah. So there's no interrupting. So I said the whole thing, and I said the beer and b'pnimis in Yanim. So the Rav, after the pilpul, turns to me and said, "You thought that I wouldn't understand the pnimis in Yanim?"
Okay, so I guess that's a hira on how to make something niskabel by somebody, is hold back, then they're going to want it more. Yeah.
But that was the avir, the koch in the Rebbe Siches and the Mifzoim. That was the geschmack.
It's also very interesting that your father, I mean, since you weren't growing up around other Lubavitchers and that sviva, but like your father, had Bashkacha Pratis, the reasons to be in New York all the time, so he kept them bringing back the Grusin. It's very interesting. Yeah. So And what other, like, were there hookups already at the time? Like,
So the hookups was like this. It was very expensive to make a hookup, a phone call for a few hours. So not every Farbrengen. We used to get from WLCC the tapes of the Farbrengens in the mail. And my father used to listen to the whole, Farbrengen. We would hear it in Mitten Elul or whatever. But we would always hear the Farbrengens in the car, here, there. My siblings recently, we spoke about Mr. Shlomo Galil, Tavshim Beis. We were little kids. So they couldn't believe that I remember some things of that. I said, what do you mean? We went up to the mountains. We heard the whole U-Base Tammuz Farbrengen in the car. And of course I remember, certain things were like...
Right. Yeah. You remember where you were?
Yeah, it's stuck. But occasionally there was a hookup. So we got the hookup from London, from Hackner in London. That's how we got it. And the Anash would gather in our living room, but I wasn't allowed to stay up. It was the Farbrengen started when in Zurich was like 3 a.m., 3:30 a.m. It wasn't. I was a kid. I had to go to school the next day. But there was a commotion. People came into the house. The Rebbe would speak on a speaker in the dining room. I would wake up and
you knew what was going on.
Take me ad mamish. Amen. And then Nigan would burst out. I would wake up again. So I would hear that in the background. The first hookup Farbrengen that I was allowed to stay up was Yud Aleph Nissen Tavshim Mem Beis. Then they already had opened up the Chabad house, the shul. Don't remember, it was Tavshim Mem Aleph. My father, my uncle, and Moshe Lazar Rappaport opened up. Before the Shliach came, they opened the shul, the Beis Chabad. Then the Shliach came. But Yud Aleph Nissen Mem Beis, I believe that he was already, I think he was already in Switzerland. And this was Shmeinim Shana, Yud Aleph Nissen Mem Beis. So that was the first time my father woke me up, allowed me to be by the whole Farbrengen. So I remember that. There was a Yid, Rabbi Yaakov Erlanger. He was really from a Yekish background, but he had a Shaykhis to Lubavitch. His father arranged for a Sregim, for the Rebbe Rashab. But he used to daven in the Chabad house, but he never was by the Rebbe. He was already an elder Yid. So for Yud Aleph Nissen Mem Beis, the Anash paid for him to go to the Rebbe. So I remember the Rebbe giving out the Tanyas, and the Rebbe said, "There's a Lufa and Stuppen," and so all the Anash in Zurich were like, "Hey, Yankel, stop pushing!" Just that was childhood memories. So there was a Geschmack, a Koch, Leben mit dem Rebbe. The first time that I came to the Rebbe was actually Tkufas Hashana, and I just saw in my Shviga's house the Kislev der Herr. Mm-hmm. And I see it's the Farbrengen.
It's right behind you.
Test Kislev Tavshim Mem Beis. That was the first time I came to the Rebbe for that Farbrengen. Yutas Kislev was Tuesday. We came to New York on Sunday. The first time I saw the Rebbe was on Monday, Erev Yutas Kislev. It was before Mincha. The Rebbe came out of the room, and I will always remember that image, how I saw the Rebbe the first time. The reason for that is because in our dining room, there was one big picture of the Rebbe hanging. It wasn't like the inflation of pictures like today. It was one nice picture on the wood. It was a picture of a Yechidus, and the Rebbe is sitting with his hand on the table like that. There's the glasses on the table. It's a famous picture. But on that picture, the way the Rebbe is sitting and the way the Rebbe's beard looks, it looks like a bit narrower and longer. So I expected the Rebbe to look that way. Now that picture is from the mid-Lamids, early Lamids, I'm not sure exactly. This was Tavshim Mem Beis, a couple of years later, and the Rebbe didn't look the way I expected him to look. Now I also like to doodle and draw. As a kid, I used to draw pictures and this. I drew tons of pictures of the Rebbe in my imagination. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I had a certain image of how the Rebbe looks. There weren't videos. There was no gem yet. The Farbrengens were already transmitted on satellite or whatever, but
you never
I never saw it. And I didn't see. I remember my father brought home the album Horebi that has pictures, Frieden's pictures. So I saw other pictures of the Rebbe, but many of the pictures were also from those years and from earlier years when the Rebbe was young. So I didn't expect the Rebbe to look the way the Rebbe looked. The Rebbe came out of his room and walked into the hall. It was so surprising to me. The Rebbe's beard was a bit wider and shorter, so it pushed. That image is like burnt into my memory. Baruch Hashem, and I hope I will never forget.
Among Chassidim is brought to you by Chassidische Der Herr. We live in a chaotic world, a world where for us Chassidim is a seinu, lei ra'inu, we do not have the ability to hear and see the Rebbe on a daily basis. Yet we know that the Rebbe is very much with us, and the Chassidus Chabad is alive and thriving more than ever before. One needs to only tap into it. Chassidische Der Herr provides you and your family with the tools necessary to tap into all of this. Whether it's the monthly magazine, the way it all began, whether it's Der Herr books, Der Herr online content, and so much more. Men, women, and children throughout the world benefit and use these tools on a daily basis. Whether it's children enjoying the children's magazine that comes along with the regular Der Herr, or enjoying the children's podcast, whether it's Bachrim in yeshivas receiving the Der Herr, whether it's girls in high schools enjoying Der Herr club in their local high school, people all over the world and from all walks of life enjoy and utilize these tools and take advantage of it. If you're not already subscribed to the Herr Monthly Magazine, do so today at derher.org. That's derher.org. Der Herr is a dynamic organization which is committed to continue providing these tools, grow on a constant basis, and do all that we can to help this effort. Baruch Hashem, it takes a lot of resources and finances to make this all happen. You can be part of Der Herr through your financial support as well, through visiting our website derher.org, or through contacting us to setting up a meeting. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the podcast.
The Rebbe held his siddur and the gartel in the hand. Only later did the Rebbe start coming into shul already with the gartel on him. In those years, the Rebbe still put the gartel on in the zal, and the Rebbe was giving out coins to all the children. Now, nobody told me. My father didn't tell me that, you got to keep the coin and a different coin goes into the pushke. I habe gar nicht gewusst. I just knew the Rebbe gave me a coin, and I saw kids go to the pushke, put it in. So I got a coin from the Rebbe. I stood closer to Gan Eden HaTachten. I walked to the pushke, put it into the pushke, like I saw kids putting, and then I just stood there near the pushke. The Weile, the Rebbe continued giving out coins to the other kids, and when the Rebbe came to the pushke, the Rebbe looked at me very intently. Shem bakumen a cent. And I was so awed. This Yiras HaKavod, I couldn't answer. I wanted to say, yeah, I understood. Yiddish was, I grew up with Yiddish. But I couldn't say, the Rebbe didn't give me another coin. I guess the Rebbe asked me, the Rebbe got the answer anyways. And then the Rebbe put
that was your welcome.
The Rebbe put his coin his own coin into the pushka, and then the Rebbe went into the zal, and then the door closed. I didn't know the Seder HaDvarim. I want to go in and daven with the Rebbe, but later I knew that by Kriyas HaTorah the door used to stay open, but by Mincha Ma'ariv, after the Rebbe would go in, Chadakov would.
Because the Rebbe is facing
because
the door.
Rebbe was standing right there and davening, so I can look at the Rebbe's face.
Right. By Kriyas HaTorah, the Rebbe is facing the other way.
Right. Yeah. And also, it's not a tefillah; it's not Shemona Esrei.
Right.
It's talking of which, in the later years, after Farbrengens, the Rebbe used to daven near his place by Farbrengen. I remember Rosh Hashanah Tavshin Nun, the first day there was a Farbrengen, which was unusual first day Farbrengen, but because it was Shabbos. The Rebbe spoke about it by Farbrengen. But there were no Makim. I didn't have a Makim Kavua then by Farbrengen anyways, but somehow I ended up standing by Farbrengen, like where the Rashag used to sit, like the end of the table, like in that area. So after the Farbrengen, the Rebbe stood up and davened Mincha by the Stender, facing the crowd. Now, right in front of the Rebbe, they made like space, everybody moved aside, nobody stood right in front of the Rebbe when the Rebbe davened, but Lamaise, there was no wall in front of the Rebbe, so
if you're over there,
so you were able to see the Rebbe. So during Shemon Esrei, everybody davened Shemon Esrei, also davened, but the whole Chazos Hashatz and Imamish were able to see the Rebbe, like, but that explains, that helps to understand that, of course, a regular day, Mincha Ma'ariv, the door had to be closed.
So, how old were you when you came to the Rebbe the first time?
Oh, so I was 8 years old. My brother also came.
What year is
I
this?
was 7. So Yutas Kisov Membeis. That was the first time we came to the Rebbe. And
so there's no Yechidus.
There was no Yechidus. We were by the Farbrengen. My father made sure Tuesday afternoon, we had to sleep, which wasn't so difficult because we were jet lagged anyways. And the Farbrengen was a 5-hour Farbrengen. It was like a long Farbrengen. So I don't remember Mamish Teichen of the Siches. I remember that everybody stood up for the Maimer. I didn't know what was going on. My father told me the Rebbe gave Zagna Maimer. And I remember the Rebbe would clap. I saw briefly when I glanced through the Derher that it talks about the strong clapping. I remember that because I remember my father lifted me up and lifted my brother up to watch the Rebbe clapping. Because we stood at the end of the Farbrengen Bime, but we were sure, we were kids. So it wasn't as packed over there, but still, we stood on the bench, this, that. On the video of Yutas Kislev Membeis, there's a video of the entire Farbrengen. So only at the end of the Farbrengen, at one point, does the camera go to that corner, and you can see my father and me and my brother singing the Alter Rebbe's Nigun, the Nigunim at the end of the Farbrengen. So I remember my father lifting me up, lifting my brother up to watch the Rebbe clap vigorously. I think, stark, stark. So that is also one of the images that I remember from our first visit by the Rebbe. That was the first time by the Rebbe.
And since after that, you came more often, or not necessarily? That was a one-time thing. It was very
expensive to come. It was very, very expensive. Even my grandfather told my father, like, what are you taking little kids to the Rebbe? They'll grow up, they'll go. It's like who ever heard of that? Is it taking little kids across the ocean? My father felt, no, they have to come. But the next time I came was Chanukah Memhei.
Was there a reason why your father decided then?
I don't know. My father was a Yutas Kislev digger. He used to come many years for Yutas Kislev. Not every year, but many years he used to come. And I guess he decided to take his boys with.
So the next time you were there...
I'm trying to think now. You asked me the question. My mother was expecting then her youngest child. Maybe to ease the burden on her, take the two boys along. But it was meshuga expensive. So it wasn't a common thing to do. Yeah, anyways. Yeah.
And the next time was, you said...
the next time was Chanukah Memhei. Chanukah Memhei. So Chanukah Memhei, so we came for the whole Chanukah, almost the whole Chanukah, I don't remember exactly, but we were here. I remember the rally, I remember the Sicha to the Skenim, I remember the Shabbos Farbrengen, and at that point I was already a bit older, and like when I was 8 years old, my father didn't teach me Likut Sichas Mamish, but when I was 11, I already learned a whole bunch of Sichas. I remember the Sicha Rav and Shmuel, about Melech Chodosh, certain Sichas I remember learning with my father. So at that point, I read, and I knew Yiddish, so I didn't understand the whole Farbrengen, but I stood the whole Farbrengen trying to understand as much as I could. I had a Gerer Chassid Amalamed. He told my father, he's only giving reshus for me to leave school. The school. Giving permission on condition that when I come back, I chazer from the Farbrengen and I sicher for Rebbe. So I remember the Rashi sich and this, and my father helped me a bit. And I chazered afterwards the Rebbe sicher.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So it was very geschmack. Chanukah Bichlal was always a very geschmack yontif by the Rebbe.
Why?
It was weekday. It was smaller. It wasn't Tishrei.
But yet people came.
And people came, and the way the Rebbe stood, Haneres Halolu, turned to the crowd, looking at the candles, looking at the crowd, looking in the siddur. It was a very intimate feeling with the Rebbe. That's how I felt, maybe because I came. Hey, the next time I came was Chanukah Memches, weiter Chanukah. Yeah. So,
and you see in the video something special about the Afghan Haneres Halolu. The Rebbe has the Rebbe sings bum always.
It was very.
I even noticed even after Chavzei Nodeh, Chanukah Tafshon Gimel by bum the Rebbe starts making with his hands.
Memhei was I have Memhei is the first time I came. Like I said, I remember seeing the Rebbe the first time as he walked out. Remember the Rebbe asked me a Shem Vakumen sent, and a few images of the Farbrengen. Mm-hmm. The Maimer, the clapping of the hands, the Siches in the background, but we were kids after the Farbrengen. We were there for 5 hours for a long Farbrengen, and finished, I don't know, 2:30, 2:45, the Farbrengen ended. We were hungry. My father took us on Kingston Avenue. The pizza store was open. We had pizza at 3 a.m. I don't know how many Crown Heights kids had that experience. We had to stay up a whole Farbrengen as mitten in the Nacht. That age, 8-year-old boys. And then to go eat pizza on Kingston Avenue.
I have a family member that I think there was a dilemma. Her kids associated going to the Rebbe with pizza. So
I didn't associate.
No, it was a big dilemma.
We were just hungry. My father didn't know what was going to do with something.
It was bothering her that this is the association, but she was told it's okay. That they know what the Iker and the Tafel is.
You remind me, Rabbi Yisrael Friedman, he was our Rosh Hashiva in Altere, so he Farbrengen with us on numerous occasions. He made that point. Me daven minche mit dem Rebbe. You go daven minche with the Rebbe, and you see the Rebbe. It's the Gilui Elikus. You come back, and garnish. You know why that happens? Because from 770 to Alateira, which was then on Troy Avenue, geht man durch Kingston Avenue. This guy buys a pizza. This guy buys an ice cream. This guy buys a candy. And by the time you reach the Zal, the Reishim of the Gila Lekus is gone. So,
and you said the third time you came with Memches.
Yeah.
So you're ready after Bar Mitzvah.
Yeah.
Where were you learning in yeshiva?
I learned still in Switzerland. My bar mitzvah was in Tafshem Mem Zayin. The plan was that after my bar mitzvah, my father is going to send me to a yeshiva, a Lubavitcher, Temchetmimim yeshiva. No more elementary, no this. Even if it's in the middle of the year, but Lamaise, the plan was at the end of the year. Brinois wasn't an option, wasn't on the table at the time. I don't know exactly why.
For whatever reason.
And although we knew, as a little kid, I always dreamt, I'm for sure going to go to Brunwa. Because Reb Kusha Kalmanson used to come to our house once a year. And of course, I'm going to go to Reb Kusha's yeshiva. I was a little kid. My father, I never discussed this with my father. That's what I thought. My father never thought that. My cousin went to learn in London, the Mechina in London, in the yeshiva. My father sent me to Teras Emes in Yerushalayim. Now, he would have sent me already in the beginning, middle of Mem Zayin or something like that, or the end of Mem Zayin. Helft der Rebbe that 2 months after my bar mitzvah, I had a skiing accident. Growing up in Switzerland, everybody grows up on skis. Just mikatnus. So I went skiing from 7 years old, 8 years old. I was a good skier. I was able to ski, but had a bad fall. And the way I fell was in Azar Eifen that I broke my hip.
Wow.
I ended up 6 weeks in the hospital, 8 months on crutches. And then I needed physical therapy to learn how to walk normal again. So when that ordeal was over, I was finally ready to go to yeshiva. But beforehand, my father took me to the Rebbe. That was Chanukah Memches. And after I went, Tevis Shvat, I went to the middle of the year. I joined the yeshiva in the middle of the year. So Chanukah Memches, the Rebbe said a sicha every night.
Right.
That was a chiddush. Shnas Hakil maybe.
And Pesach also, the Rebbe said a sicha every night.
It could be that it was because of Shnas Hakil. Bechlal Shnas Hakil was a big koch. I remember Sukkot already in Switzerland. Me and my brother, we made Kinuse Hakil in Zurich. And we made like the cards for Hakil, Tefach al Tefach. We got the Allgemeine. My grandfather was a Monui of the Allgemeine Journal. So in the Allgemeine Journal, there was the ad for the Hakil and the cards. So I took it from there, I copied it, typed up my own. We made cards for Hakil. We were kids. We were written up in the Krachavad magazine. Me and my brother made a Kinus Hakil for children in the Beis Chabad in Zurich. Go find the Gillian, the old Gillianis in Kfar Chabad. It shows you that we were like into things. And I came here to the Rebbe. The first night...
It reminds me that the Rebbe is written up in Ha'ach, when the Rebbe was a kid. No, the Rebbe was far away from that.
Yeah.
But he...
It's
a good thing, you know.
Yeah, sure. So Chanukah Memches, the first sicha, after the sicha, the Rebbe came down. The Rebbe was giving out peklach of dollars to the tankisten. So I didn't view myself as a tankist or whatever, but I stood there for the sicha, right by the edge of the Rebbe's bime. So as soon as the Rebbe came down, everybody pushed forward, and I landed right in front of the Rebbe, like by the table. So the Rebbe is holding a pekel of dollars, and the Rebbe looks at me, a tankist? Bist du a tankist? So I nodded, yeah. Now, I'm not sure that I understood even what the Rebbe said. But later on, I chapped sich, and I was like, am I a tankist? Am I going out? But then I remembered that on Sukkot, the Shliach made a Sukkah-mobile. Remember, Rosenfeld made a Sukkah-mobile, and we were very much involved. We went with the Sukkah-mobile, we did Mivtza Lulav, we put up the signs on the Sukkah and everything. So decided, okay, so I didn't lie, I'm taka tankist. And so that was an interaction that I had with the Rebbe then, Memches. And Shabbos Farbringen was a long Farbringen. I remember that at the end of the Farbringen was like Minche, Meirev. I don't remember if it was Memhei, Memches. Could be it was both of them. Memches, I'm almost sure
it's
that
the middle
it
of
was
the winter,
that way.
yeah.
Yeah, it's in winter, and it's a Shabbos Chanukah. So the Rebbe spoke the Zohar and the Rashi and Rambam already in Memches, and Memhei also was Rambam. And the Farbringen was a long Farbringen, so that I remember that, ending the Farbringen, there was Minche, and then afterwards Meirev. It was the end of Shabbos. Which again, for us, Memhei, Memches, my father already had experienced that. I have never experienced that. So that like...
Right.
A unique...
So you ended up going to Teres Emes. There's other people there besides Israelis in Teres Emes?
The shiurim in Teres Emes then were not in Ivrit. They were in Yiddish.
Because you're Shalim.
Yeah. And that's why my father sent us there. Because I didn't speak English. My cousin...
Al-Latayra, they're also in Yiddish.
He
didn't want
to
to
send overseas that far wasn't on the table.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be around Europe. So my cousin went to England. He spoke English. In their home, they spoke English. I didn't speak English. So my father and to Brinvai didn't want to send us. At the time, Brinvai wasn't, as it became in later years, much more popular. Then it was very quiet. So he sent us to Teres Emes, where the shiurim were in Yiddish. Okay. That's how Teres Emes was chosen.
Mm-hmm. And how long were you there?
I was there, Memches, Memtes, Nun. Really, at the end of Memtes, that was the end of Yeshiva Ktane. I didn't want to continue Yeshiva Gdei Teres Emes. I wanted to come to Alatera already. But the Yeshiva in Teres Emes had closed down the Zal for a couple of years. That year, for Tafshin Nun, they reopened the Zal. And they begged us, the Anhole begged us to stay. Meaning they begged the Bachrim that, not saying, the Bachrim that some gehalten beim Lernen, the Bachrim that were Shemus Dorim and learning, they wanted a good group of Bachrim to open the Zal with. The majority of the class went to Kfar Chabad. You know, kids who grew up in Teres Emes elementary and then through Mesifte, Yeshiva Ktane, they didn't enough. They wanted to move out, so they went to Kfar Chabad. So the majority of my class actually went to Kfar Chabad. A bunch of them stayed in Teres Emes, and I didn't want. I wanted to go to the Rebbe.
They're all Israelis.
To go to Eletera. Huh?
They're all Israelis. These class.
Yeah, most of them. There were a few. There were like two guys from Montreal. Shmukler and Kazikuru. There were some chutznikim,
majority,
but the majority were Israeli guys. And so I told my father, I want to go to New York. I want to go to the Rebbe. I want to learn near the Rebbe. Enough, you know. My father was very nervous. Why? Because my father didn't know exactly what's going on here in New York. He didn't know about Oletera. He only knew 770. Every time he came to 770, he saw Bachrim hanging out outside, smoking, schmoozing. He didn't have a good reishim that this is a place to send a bacha to learn. Mm-hmm. He was very, very nervous. But he didn't tell me that that's the reason. I didn't know that that's the reason. And I said, what do you mean? I want to go learn near the Rebbe. I want to be by the Rebbe. Tisha Memtes, I came for Sukkot. My father took me and my brother because I had my skiing accident the year before. So my father was nervous. Hakofis was pushing and this. So actually, my father, me and my brother, Memtes Hakofis, we stood in the hole where the Skenim stood. The Rebbe's
they let you
bime was like moved over, and in the corner where the Rebbe's bime usually stood were the Skenim. That's where I was by Hakofis.
Who let you in?
Vadam Mesader. My father arranged it. He's talking about Vadam Mesader. Tavshim Memhei came for the rally. Every bench had designated Olatera Kita Aleph, Olatera Kita Beis, Lubavitch Yeshiva. Two boys from Switzerland. Where are they sitting? So my father sat us down on one of the benches. Very soon, you can't sit here. Makim Kavua. Came one of them, Vadam Mesader, came over. What's going on? My father told him, two boys coming from across the street, the sea to hear the Rebbe. You better let them sit. And they got hold us. Lamaise, we were the boys who actually listened from beginning to the end to the Rebbe. I couldn't believe it. The Melamdim gave out lollipops to the kids so they should be kind. Kids were playing and Switzerland boys. Forget about it. This is the Rebbe. We had assembly in school. The principal would speak to the entire school, or Rabbonim that came to visit. I remember the Boston Rebbe. I remember the Rav Frenkel from Tel Aviv. Rav Lavus Shver came. So he spoke to the whole school. You couldn't hear a peeps. Whatever the 15 minutes they gave a speech, covered Chveisvos, Pasha Shavua, or whatever they spoke about. But the Derech Eretz for Arov, Stam Arov, the Rebbe, I couldn't believe the scene.
It's called culture shock.
Culture shock. I couldn't believe this concept.
You didn't know what
talking while the Rebbe is talking, it's playing under the tables and this. And even me as a kid, I thought to myself, and they need to sit here and we had to fight for our seats. But whatever.
And after
Memches,
when the Rebbe spoke very strongly to the kids that were making noise, the one time the Rebbe addressed it. So I heard that afterwards there was like a whole campaign in the schools.
Like, still.
Yeah, like
you mentioned that sicher. my father, Chalamayt Sukkis, Memches, he had to come to New York. Epis a business, a dover ha'ovid. Chalamayt, he had to come. But he didn't, the whole family was in Switzerland, and I was still on crutches. So he came here. He saw what's going on every night. Chalamayt Sukkis. This was Shnas Hakil, and was Shnas Tismach Utesamach. The Rebbe was like 15 years younger. It was, I wasn't here, but everybody talks about this. And my father saw it. He saw, he chalished to stay. He had mamish a hard time to leave back for Switzerland for Simchas Torah. But he did. He had a flight that night. So he was by the rally.
That rally.
And he had to go catch a flight. And the Rebbe starting another siche. And that was the siche. My father was on Spilkes, he waited. But he came back. I remember he was talking in the Chabad house to the Anash, the Leil Shmini Atzeres, just of his experience of the last few days by the Rebbe. And he Pasha had tears in his eyes because he's going to have to go, that he didn't stay for Simchas Torah, but he told, right then, he told my mother that night, next Niyar HaKafis, we're by the Rebbe, meaning him and the boys. The year after Tafshinun, he took the girls also. He took the whole family for Tishrei to Rebbe.
So Memtes Taki, you were there.
So Memtes, we came on Chalamoid Sukkot, first day Chalamoid. We flew to New York. We were here till after Simchas Torah. So the first Hakafis that I was zeicher to see by the Rebbe was Tafshin Memtes, and I had a good spot right there. So the first and seventh Hakaf I wasn't able to see because everybody stood up and we climbed up onto the Rebbe's bima, but
all in the middle of the show.
Yeah, but it was hard to see. But all the Hakafis, Pashit, this was Agila Lekus. I never saw the Rebbe like that. Dancing, clapping, the Mo'ir Ponim, looking around to everybody and making like this. The Rebbe greeted people like this, like the Rebbe motioned to people like Ashalom Aleichem. All these kind of tnuas and the whole, the idudim had Rebbe, this Pashet was out of this world. That's I already saw the Rebbe a few times by then, but still, that was Hakafis. And then I was Eiche Tafshinun, Nun Aleph, Nun Beis, Hakafis as well.
So yeah, I think we got into this because you're in the middle of
good.
saying how you're. So you wanted to go to
I wanted to go to Alateira. So my father said, the Rebbe always says, go speak with us. I said, what do you mean? Dan Holle, of course, is going to say that. They are begging us to stay. I don't want to talk to Dan Holle.
I love how nothing changed, by the way. I'm thinking about my experiences in yeshivas.
So my father told me, go speak to Rabbi Yossel Segal. Rabbi Yossel Segal, he was a Rosh Keilel Tzemach Tzedek, but he had, Tzemach Tzedek is connected to Teras Emes, and my father had a shaykhis with Rabbi Yossel Segal. Why?
Would he come to Switzerland
because
too?
But that was already when I was in yeshiva, not when I grew up.
Because he travels around.
It was because of my father and because of the Rebbe.
Okay.
What happened was, my father, when we learned in Teras Emes, so my parents came occasionally to Eretz Yisrael to visit us. So I don't remember what Farbrengen it was. There was a Yom the Pagre, Yubes Tammuz, Hayutes Kislev, something like that, a Yud Shvat maybe, in Shikun Chabad in Yerushalayim, and Rabbi Yossel Segal Farbrengt. And my father was there, and he watched the Farbrengen, and my father said to himself first, that type is perfect for the Olam in Europe, Antwerpen, Zurich. It's the Chassidische Olam. They would love this style of Farbrengen. So my father told Reb Shia Yuzevich. The next day, I heard the Farbrengen of Yossel Segal. I think that you should send him to fundraise for Teras Emes. He never did fundraising. That wasn't his thing. But Shia wrote this to the Rebbe. Reb Shia Yuzevich wrote to the Rebbe that Schmerling from Switzerland is Matzia as Yossel Segal, the Rebbe answered, circled my father's name, Schmerling Eimer, or whatever he wrote, Vechein Yase, or Yase Katzosei. That was it. So then he came to Switzerland. But I wasn't there when he was in Switzerland.
So his whole career
after that, every year, Yossel Segal came to Switzerland.
I've seen him in various places that I've been in, yeshiva, whatever, he came, and it's all because of that.
All because of that. That started it. So my father told me, go speak to Yossel Segal, verstandige Kopf, discuss with him. Yossel Segal convinced me to stay another year in Teres Emes. It was a good year. We learned well, and I feel bad that I could have had another year by the Rebbe, but this
is Tafshin Nun.
It was a Geschmacke year.
Tafshin Nun?
This was Tafshin Nun. Mm-hmm. And now, there was a group of Shluchim.
I was about to ask that. There's probably a group.
This was the group of Shluchim, came in Tess. These were heavy-duty Shluchim. Abraham Sternberg, Zalman Valovik, Mendel Azimov, Shlomo Huminer, Berel Levertov, Yosef Vogel, Ariel Sasson. Kennst du Ariel?
No.
I missed out somebody, I think. But these were Shluchim, sie haben übergekehrt Yerushalayim. They, as much as this kashrus that I had me before, they haben das reingebochet. So, like, before Tishrei, but davon zum Rebbe nach Tishrei. So, I said, I don't have where to stay. If I can't go for Rosh Hashanah to New York, where will I stay? So Mendel Chaim, him I didn't mention. Mendel Chaim said, you'll stay in my parents' house. Me and my brother. So I told my parents, we want to go for Tishrei to New York. So my mother was a little bit upset. Ganz year you're away in yeshiva. Yontif, you got to come home. But basically told her, listen, Tishrei is been bam Rebbe. At that point, I wasn't a little boy anymore.
You already grew up already.
I didn't have money, so I still needed my father to pay for the ticket. But so my father decided...
The Shluchim didn't teach you how to bring a suitcase of electronics? That was a mechanism,
that wasn't on the table, no. And my father decided then, okay, so let them go for Rosh Hashanah already, in Kippur, and him and my mother and the girls will join for Sukkot. They stayed in the Plaza Hotel in Crown Plaza on Crown Street, yeah. But me and my brother, we stayed by Ramat Chaim, and I'm thankful to them, Ada Yemazeh, because first of all, I had a place in the basement where to sleep, but also, it's a Chassidische Stub. The Aver in the Stub, Ramat was a Chassidische Yid, his Rebbetzin, Levalu ben Chaim Lechaim. The whole Aver was a Geschmack Aver, the whole bunch of boys, Chassidische Bochlim, gelaufen zum Rebbe. They showed me the ropes. They told me, wo man darf sein, wenn man, you know.
That was your first time.
This was the first time that I was a whole Tisha by the Rebbe.
Right.
So, you know, everything, Mendel Chaim, Moshe Chaim, they helped us out and telling us where to be when, and the marsh, and the kaporas, and the broches, that bichlatrim. I knew about these things, but they helped us and got us in. It was very, very good. We had a geschmacke time that Tishrei in their home. Actually, one of the Chains got engaged. They had a L'chaim on Chalamoid Sukkos that year. I remember my parents came to the L'chaim. They thanked them, hosting us, so, was geschmacke Tishrei. But these Chevre, so the whole Tafshin Nun, they verbring with the Bachrim.
You got a lot of it.
I gained that year in Teres Emes.
Exposure.
It was very good. But at the end of the year, I said, okay, but that's it. It was nice 1 year, Zal Teres Emes, I got to go to the Rebbe. My father told me why he's hesitant. Bachrim's a lernen. I come, I see hanging out. Es ist nicht kein Avir von Lernen. That's when I chapzich what his hesitation is. So I already knew. I told him, I'm not going to 770. I'm going to Ola Torah. I said, what is Ola Torah? He didn't know. So I told him, next time you're in New York, at that point, he came almost monthly to New York for business. Next time you're in New York, Macha Bazucha, Bikram is this. Alateira Zal was then on Troy. And the doors, there were like two flapping doors, and they had like
a window,
cut out windows.
The Magen David, I think. Yeah?
Not a Magen David.
No, it's a window.
Just a square, like a diamond shape. And my father came in mitten tug. Baruch Hashem, there was no farbrengen the night before. It was a full zal. It was like 200 bachrim sitting. Hakel Teire Ad Hashamayim. My father was blown away. Apodnevish and Lubavitch? He was joking. But I said, sitzt du mir lernt? Say, Tutzach. You're going to Alateira? You can go. And that's when I came.
I think Ad Yom Hazeh, when people bring people to Crown Heights, and as walking around, they want to show up a Bismedrish. You could bring them to Alateira Zal. That's the way it works.
Okay. So I came. Now, when I was here by the Rebbe as a kid, so my father took us with him as a guest. They let him stand, near my future Shver, Moshe Kotlarski, Biam Klein, like in that corner. There always were like guests standing there. So I stood there. But when I came, let's say Tisha Tavshinun, I was on my own. So every Farbrengen, I just squeezed in somewhere, and I didn't hear not one Farbrengen. Tisha Tavshinun, I didn't have a place.
No place. Yeah.
So I tried to ask Chaverim in Alateira, like, how do you get a place where you can actually always have your place, and you can't get, you have to be Yeirishit from Kitzer. Came the first Shabbos, it was El Tavshinun. I went to the area where my future Shver stood, Moshe Kotlarski. I was a shtickle ben bais by Moshe Kotlarski. I ate there a lot on Shabbosim. And because Moshe Kotlarski also used to come to us. Moshe was a guest in our house many times. I remember him in our childhood. He didn't stay in our house like some of the other guests. He usually stayed in a hotel. But he used to come eat by us and Farbrengen with my father. So, I wasn't scared to go right there and try to squeeze my way in there somewhere. So I came there. So there were some other people, like behind the Rebbe, the bench. There were like the Aftsons, Lipskers. There was a few families who stood there in that corner. Rabbi Springer stood there. And I just like squeezed into the corner over there. Like behind the Rebbe, there's like the pole, and like in that corner, I just squeezed myself. Everybody started to protest.
Like
who are you? What is this?
You're talking about like by the air conditioning vent situation.
Yeah. Where now there's a door to go into the Ezas Noshim. Yeah. So everybody started like burching, like, who is this Bacher? What does he think he's doing? Who are you? So I said, I'm standing in my father's place. You need a bit. Without some chutzpah, you wouldn't make it. Mm-hmm. So they said, Aleph, Ein Yerusha Mechaim. Beis, your father doesn't have a place here. When he comes, Amol, lost mit dem stehen. There's a place, he has a place. So I turned to each one over there. 1 second. Am I disturbing you? I made it personal. The next guy. Me standing here bothers you? Like, how am I bothering you? There was no pushing in that corner. There was room. Yeah, when there were a lot of guests, Kinnis HaShluchim or Tishrei, over there it got very packed. Because all of those people, like my father or my uncle, they all got to squeeze in there. But Stam HaShabbos, it was pretty comfortable standing there. So I like, am I disturbing you? What does it bother you? Let me stand. So everybody felt uncomfortable. Yes, bothered me that you got to get out. Nobody said that.
That became your place?
That became my place. Next Shabbos.
You were able to see?
Elul Tavshinun, the end of that, Elul Tavshinun Aleph, my brother and my cousin came to Alateira. I was already Ereach Mevi Ereach. They stood with me. At that point, I needed, I can't just bring them. So I made a contraption. I took a few milk crates, and I made like a whole contraption over there, a few steps, which actually the people there appreciated. So now it became a shtickle matziv over there, but it was more comfortable. But b'schuzeh, I had my brother and my cousin.
What do you mean?
stand
You made
with
the milk crates for what? For the other people?
for them and for us. So like that, it didn't disturb so much because it was in the corner, but it was a raised
Higher.
platform. Made a whole.
So every Fabringen you would bring this from.
I had it with a chain tied up in the Chutz of 770 by the Tashlich with a number lock before Fabringen, schlepp in the boxes. Every Fabringen, Baruch Hashem, Nun Aleph, Nun Beis, was able to hear every single Fabringen, see the Rebbe from close.
You could see.
From the side.
Yeah, from the back side.
Back side, but not mamish the back. It was pretty much the side. Yeah.
And you were higher than everyone else.
Yeah. So I had a good place, Baruch Hashem, was eichet to hear. Now, the Eibishter, Chein el Adam Das, gave me a chush that I was able to do chazorah. So between the sikhs, I would...
So right away?
Right away, I would say chazorah.
To who?
To the Elam around. And
the older people than you?
Yeah, people who didn't hear so well, people who couldn't follow the whole time. So everybody started appreciating that I'm standing there. That between the sikhs, you get like a recap of what the Rebbe spoke.
I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
You already knew the Rebbe Signin, like from hookups?
From childhood.
Like
I said, I heard the Rebbe in my house on the tapes, the WRCC tapes that came. It was playing all the time. So the Signin was mamish, and I had no problem.
So you showed up, Tafshanun, you started doing this chazara, whatever, for the people. Was that a common thing that in different corners there's 70 people doing chazara?
I don't know. I'll tell you, talking about chazara. First night of Sukkot, the Rebbe would say a sicha downstairs in the shul, and then the Rebbe would say a sicha in the sukkah to greet the orchim. Now, usually, like Chazal say, whoever sees this doesn't see that. It couldn't be. But Tafshinun, I decided, ich will zen beide. So I heard the sicha downstairs. And then
Tafshinun, this is before this?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tisha Tafshinun. I think it was Tisha, maybe it was Nun Aleph. I have to look up the sicha. And I ran right after the Rebbe finished the sicha. Before the Rebbe left the shul, I started already pushing. It was a huge pushing crowd to hear the sicha in the front. But I pushed through the crowd and I went to the back, to the steps that go to the chutzner in the corner of 770. In the meantime, the Rebbe had already gone upstairs, gone out the front door, gone into the sukkah. Now, I didn't know where in the sukkah the Rebbe is saying the sicha. I had no idea. I came from the back of the sukkah, like from the union side, and there were like tables blocking the entrance to the sukkah. So I kriegt under the table, and I hear the Rebbe's voice, and I come up from under the table, and I see Rav Chadakov. So I right away went right under the table again. But the Rebbe stood on that table. That was like the stage. So I was able to hear the whole sicha. It was a short sicha.
So the Rebbe stood by union?
Yeah.
The Rebbe walked all the way to there?
Yeah.
And there's steps for the Rebbe to go up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not always, and they tried one year to do it in the front. I don't know, but that was the only time.
So you're about to pop up right in front of the Rebbe, basically?
No, the Rebbe stood a little bit further to the left, but right next to Chadakov. So I know, the Rebbe is here. So I right away ducked back under the table, but I was able to hear the whole sicha. And then I went to Kotlarski's house for Sudas Yom Tov in the sukkah. So Reb Moshe asked me if I can chazer repis from the sicha. Everybody tried to, who heard the sicha? So I chazered the sicha from the shul. And then I said, and then the Rebbe said in the sukkah, everybody's looking at me like, how do you know what the Rebbe said in the sukkah? Like that was a funny experience. Yeah.
Was the chazara, was this stuff ever formalized? Did you ever do anything?
No.
With chazara, like hanachas, you wrote stuff?
That was for Tkuf 8 weeks. There's a Shliach in Florida, Rabbi Schmerling. So, Rebbe Ephraim de Michovsky wrote the Rad. The Rosh Dvarim.
You're talking about when? Nun Aleph?
Nun Aleph, Nun Beis. And he wrote the Rad was excellent. But the Rad was in Lashon HaKodesh. So some Bachrim in alle Tere felt. Rebbe Chaim de Mechaske also was a Bach in alle Tere. He was in Shir Dalet, I was in Shir Beis, but in Nun Beis I was in Shir Gimel. He left then. I don't remember. But we felt the Geschmacke Eisius in Yiddish, sometimes the Lashon Orav, we want to preserve that. So it was Shmoki Man and Eliezer Zaklakowski and Rav Broin from Crown Heights and myself. We would get together Motzei Shabbos. So the Chayzrim was Rav Broin and me, and Eliezer Zaklakowski also remembered Eisius. Shmuel Man was more the Ruach HaChaya Baifanim, to type it and print it and copies and sell the copies to the Bachrim. Hanocha Pratis, Bilti Muge. For 8 weeks we did that.
Who was writing it?
Rav Broin. Yeah. Would write it, and I would make my Hagoes, and Eliezer Zaklakowski threw in some Hagoes. And till it became Adova Shalom. We knew that we became an official Zach when Pashas Boy, the Rebbe spoke about Saddam Hussein, and then the Rebbe said to take it out of the Hanoche, not to print it.
Because the Rebbe said that Saddam...
So Label Groner was working on tracking down those few Bachrim, all the Torah Bachrim. He needed to tell them also, don't write it up. We had written it up, a pale, but we didn't type it, we didn't publish it. Only in later years, it was found and typed up and discovered.
You want to say?
What are you doing? You'll find it on the different websites that have all these anochis, and you can find it over there. And it was those Shabbosim were glad the good Shabbosim to do that, because there was a certain individual who was mekatrik on Am Yisrael in that winter of Nun Aleph. So
during the Gulf War.
Sharf Eisius on Asar B'Tevis. But then for the next 3 Shabbosim, Vaychi, Shmois, V'Eira, the Rebbe had gefeiert. And, the Rebbe's tsar on the Kitrug was immense. And from the place where I stood by Farbrengen, actually, you were able to see how the Rebbe's hands were moving during the Sikhe. Bichlal, the Rebbe sat, usually, there are exceptions that I wasn't there, but I heard different times during the Parshas Sfarim and other times that the Rebbe put his hands on top of the table. But usually it was under the table. But throughout the Sikhe, the entire Sikhe, the Rebbe had his hands on his legs, close to his knees, and the Rebbe had like this rhythm that he would bang his legs. The entire Sikha.
You can see this.
I could see that the whole time. I don't know if this is visible on the camera. The Rebbe
you see sometimes the tablecloth moving.
Yeah, right. Because the Rebbe would do that.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes the Rebbe made other tnuas. One time was during that Sikha. I don't remember now which of the 3 Shabbosim this was. The Rebbe said, Rachmanu litzlan, Abbasav Adam, zog dem Eibishter was zu tun. What the Eibishter does, macht shiduchim. I think it was Vo'era, maybe it was Boy. I don't remember. But when the Rebbe said these words, Rachmanu litzlan, Abbasav Adam, zog dem Eibishter was zu tun. So the Rebbe under the table, Rachmanu litzlan, Abbasav Adam, zog dem Eibishter. You're able to see that from anybody who stood behind and from the side, were able to see that. Another thing that the Rebbe, the entire Farbrengen, the Rebbe would not sit leaning on the back of the chair. By Tfilis, and also after Farbrengen in the summer, Pirkei Avos, after Mincha, the Rebbe would sit down, the Rebbe would lean back more on the chair, but Farbrengen, the Rebbe would sit on mamish the edge of the chair. Now you try to sit like that for a little while. It's not so easy, especially a whole Farbrengen, and at the Rebbe's age in those years, Nun Aleph, Nun Beis. So under the table, there was a footrest. But on the footrest, the Rebbe's knees and shins were resting, because the Rebbe sat forward on the edge of the table, of the chair, so his legs were like resting against that footrest. One Shabbos, I don't remember now which Shabbos it is, the Rebbe mentioned in the Sikha, Hashamayim kisi va'oris hadem raglei. Teich kedei, the Rebbe is saying that. The Rebbe is lifting up one leg, putting it on the footrest. Oris hadem raglei. These are things that you were able to see from that vantage point. Interesting. And I'm talking. Shabbos Bereishis, Nun Aleph. There was Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah was Thursday, Friday, and then Shabbos Bereishis. There was 2 Farbrengens. The second Farbrengen, I think after the first Sikha, I don't know, maybe after the second Sikha, the Rebbe took out his glasses from the pocket and opened up the Siddur. And the Rebbe put on his glasses. I right away saw the Rebbe is opening up to Bnei Hechala. And Bnei Hechala Take. Talking about that Shabbos, also Geschmack Zikaron. 2 days, Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah, by the Rebbe, Hakofis, Friday, day Hakofis. The next morning, Shabbos Bereishis is Shabbos Mevorchim. Darf sagen Tillim. At that point, how many people were still? The Rebbe, of course, 38 Tillim. The Rebbe walked into the shul. If there were 250 people in the shul, that's a lot. It was empty. The shul was empty. The whole back of the shul was empty. Everybody stood in front near the Aron Kodesh, crowding around there, waiting for the Rebbe to enter. I happened to stand near the bima of Kriyas HaTorah. I stood over there. The Rebbe came in. The whole back of the shul is empty. The goyim were still busy cleaning up. They turned over benches and whatever. They were cleaning up. On the side, now they broke through there. There used to be bathrooms downstairs.
Under the Weibishal.
Yeah, under the Weibishal. And in front of the bathrooms, there was like a hole and there were like doors. So in front of those doors, there was a bench. And there was a big thing with coffee and an open box, or 2 open boxes of mezenis, the Vatsu the Shleimi used to put out. The Rebbe walked in. It was quiet in the shul. Yeah, in the front, a few guys started singing. But everybody was verschlafen. Be happy, you made it, 8:30 Tillim. Everybody was so exhausted after 2 days of Shmini Atzeres Simchas Torah. So the singing was like very subdued. And the Rebbe walked in. The Rebbe wasn't me'oided. The Rebbe was looking around, looking at the goyim cleaning. Then the Rebbe looked at the coffee and the mezenis as he was walking into the shul, checking out the scene. And the Rebbe kept on walking. And even he came to the front. He wasn't me'oided. The Rebbe went up the stairs, put down his tillim, and then the Rebbe turned around. And the Rebbe was me'oided. Simchas Torah digeyidudim, like just a few times, but basically waking up the whole Elam. Achre Maisa, I felt that the Rebbe gave up a schar for all those that actually made it to Tillim on time.
They got something.
Got something special, a special. That was a beautiful experience. Another thing that I remember, Tnuas under the table, was Shabbos Noyach Nun Beis. The Rebbe finished one of the sichos is Havayu Lekim, like Yom Kippur, and the Rebbe was counting with his fingers under the table, like closing one finger, another, counting like the way the Rebbe would count. And but again, under the table, the majority of the Elam didn't see that. That's just another.
The Rebbe said like Unhavayu, Unhavayu.
Not every time. Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, some of the times I think. Yeah. I have a question about the sichos. So you come El Tavshin Nun. So I guess that's when you're there and listening to all the sichos, live. Mm-hmm. The signing changed a lot those years. Like, right. I mean, I know myself that I can watch and listen to Farbrengens. It's a lot more challenging to follow the sichos now from the base. You maybe could. Maybe explain that a little bit.
So first of all, the Seder that existed before Memches, every Farbrengen had Rashi Sicha, Apikavis Sicha, Rambam Sicha, Ha'oris, Tatan Sa'oris. That whole Seder stopped before I came already. I mean, I remember that from my childhood visits by the Rebbe, but in Tafshinun that was already not the case for a while. The Shabbos Verbringens were a little bit more, how should I say, a weekday Sikha, sometimes, because you can only listen to a weekday Sikha. You can't listen to a Shabbos Sikha. Right? There was no more, I meant a Verbringens Sikha. There were no more weekday Verbringens after Chabi Shvat Mem Ches. And so by Verbringen, it wasn't exactly like the weekday Sikhs. It had a bit more structure, but it was similar, at least at times, where the Rebbe would, my father called it, the Rebbe speaking in telegram style. Like, avot, and you need to be able to connect to get and the Rebbe would repeat in the Sikha tons of times, Kim duber kamapam, Kim duber bisvadas hakedemis, and indeed, if you look back in Sikhs from all the years, you understood better what the Rebbe's points are. The Rebbe is building on top of Kol Teres Achsidis and all his Verbringens from the years before. But it was a bit challenging to follow those Sikhs. It was difficult to get a whole Sikha.
One of the integral components of being a chassid are the Chassidish Yom Tovim and Yom Pagra. Whether it's Hey Tevis, Yud Shvat, Yud Aleph Nisan, or Gimel Tammuz. These days give us an opportunity to connect with our Rabbeim, to connect with each other, and be better Chassidim. What is the story behind each of these days? How did the Rebbe commemorate and celebrate these days? And most importantly, what are the lessons, the takeaways, and the action items Hamaisa Hua Ikr needed for each of these days? All of this and much, much more are answered in the new set recently published by Der Herr. Our Days is a journey through the Chabad calendar in story, meaning, and practice. With over 700 beautiful, glossy pages with elevated content, beautiful, beautiful photographs, you, your family, and friends will enjoy and live with each Chassidish Yom Tov. This book is a must for every Lubavitcher home, for every shul, for every school. It is a perfect gift item. This will not collect dust. It will be used day after day, month after month, year after year. You can have this set. Go to derher.org/Our Days. Order your set today and start living with the Chassidish Yom Tov.
I saw that. I learned all the Hanachas.
Mm-hmm.
Now from the days like the Fax Sicha, the Mchavsky. So I can't compare the Shabbosim, but I seen the weekday. What they'll do is they'll add like a line. Valpiza Yuvan, like
connecting words.
Yeah, just adding three
to give it to lend it some more structure.
Right, so you understand what the Rebbe is trying to do with the flow. Yeah, basically.
Right. So Shabbos Verbringen, you also had to do it, but a little bit less. Because the Rebbe sat down for a Verbringen, and the Rebbe spoke longer. A weekday Sikha sometimes was 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Verbringen was half an hour. Sometimes it was short Sikhas on Shabbos also, but the Rebbe spoke a little bit more oisgeret, but still it was challenging to halt cup and remember everything. And oftentimes, also to push to understand. Sometimes, I was able to repeat what the Rebbe said. Not necessarily did I get, okay, so what's the connection? Let's say later in the week when the Mugadige Sikha came out. So that gave it more, of course, was more structure to the Sikha. But there were exceptions. I remember Chamishasa B'Shvat Tafshinun Beis. That was a weekday Sikha. And the Rebbe spoke like years before. The Rebbe explained each one with the Shivas Haminim, the Proteus, in Aveda. So that was and also the last Verbringen. Vayakel, the first Sikha was over an hour. And the Rebbe spoke mamish built up, Mesuder. There's a built in Muge Hanoche, of course, of that Sicha. And the Rebbe Taka spoke that way. It was like
When you read the Hanoche,
very unusual
yeah,
to suddenly hear Azah Sicha, Azah Fabringen. It was an amazing experience to be by such a Fabringen. As the Mekablim, would have loved if all the Sichas were that way. But, the Rebbe gets Teire, that's the Shchinim Medabez Metech Greinei, and that's it. That's how it is.
on the other hand, all of a sudden, in those years, there's certain inyanim that the Rebbe spoke like very clear. If not like the inyanim Mashiach, like the Rebbe spoke like very, very to the point, very, very,
Right.
like very strong atheists at the same time. I see usually in those Hanachas, those built
Yeah,
in
the
Muga.
Rebbe didn't speak up as
No, but sometimes the Rebbe could start explaining an Indian Chassidus, and it's like without the whole Harchava.
Right.
That if you don't know the Chassidus, it's hard to
Like the
understand.
Shchedesh Kislev, coming to the Shchedesh Kislev, Nun Beis, it was a weekday Sicha, and the Rebbe spoke Tifa in Yanim Chassidus, at the time, until I heard Rabbi Yael explain what the Rebbe, it was hard to understand. Tifa in Yanim, that the Rebbe was Megale, Dafke in
Right.
Tavshin Nun Beis.
I mean, then all of a sudden when it comes to the
The height
Inyanim,
of is the Nesias.
right, and then the Inyanim Mashiach is very clear. I mean, I don't know, take the most famous example, Chav Ches Nissen, Tavshin and Aleph.
Yeah.
Every child can understand what the Rebbe is saying, right? Like,
True. Yeah.
it's a...
You're saying Chav Ches Nissen, also Chav Ches Sivan. The Rebbe spoke about das kann sich Neside Reine wünschen, that Beis Hamikdash should come down and be mislabish here, and from here going to Eretz Yisrael. These are Asias. Later, that became the basis of the Kuntres Beis Rabbeinu
Bishop
Bavel. But I remember hearing the words from the Rebbe that I don't remember the exact words now, but the Neside Reinu is Roy, kann sich wünschen, and peilt, and viert Eis, as Beis Hamikdash HaShlishi should first come down here and be mislabish in 770, and from here go to Eretz HaKedesh. I mean, this, you would think, a Chosid, ba Verbringen, spät bei Nacht, drückt sich Eis, to hear the Rebbe say, as solche Eisies, that was amazing. That was indeed very, very unique.
I can imagine that after the Fabrengens, what most of the Elam picked up was those type of Asis that the Rebbe was using, and that was like the Kach. Am I wrong? Am I right?
No. Most of the Elam first had to be hear what did the Rebbe speak. Because the majority of the Elam in Samsam, they couldn't hear the Rebbe.
Nun Beis.
No Beis, even on Aleph. Those that sat right in front of the Rebbe, a little bit to the side, and that was it. The whole side and the bleachers, and they weren't able to hear. Sometimes the Rebbe raised his voice a bit, so they heard words, they heard the end of a Sicha. They couldn't follow a Sicha at all on Shabbos. And, Baruch Hashem, I didn't have the challenge to stand like that, Fabringen after Fabringen. Of course, a Chassid, the Neshama heard, and just looking at the Rebbe for those 2 hours, 3 hours, of course you stood by Fabringen, Chassidische Bachrim, but I'm sure that this wasn't a Pashut thing to come week after week, the Rebbe Fabringen every single Shabbos, and not be able to hear.
I heard from others your age that they started creating new places then, like under the tables and here.
Right. Yeah.
And one of them was telling me that the place that he created, he was only able to hear.
Right.
But that was a decision. Like, I'm not going to be
Right.
able to see, but at least I could hear everything.
Right.
And then,
I'll see the Rebbe by davening. I'll see the Rebbe, at other times. But the Fabringen, I want to hear what the Rebbe is.
so the Rebbe, because of all the years when the Rebbe speaking on Shabbos, the Rebbe projected
stronger.
The Rebbe didn't even do that. B'chlal.
Yeah. The Gashmis was more difficult. That's the.
But did the Rebbe speak a little louder than a weekday, or not necessarily?
I can't know, because in weekday there was a mic. Tishrei, the Rebbe raised his voice more by the Sichos that were Shabbos, Yom Tov, Farbrengens, the Rebbe made an effort, because I remember there was Bechlal more rash in overall 770, because there were more people, so automatically there's like this hum over the crowd, so it didn't get as quiet as a Stama Shabbos in Mitten Yor. But I was still able to hear every word from the Rebbe. And the Rebbe, you were able to tell that the Rebbe is raising his voice. Which reminds me, Tavshnun Beis, the Rebbe used to say the Siches Sukkos in the front of the shul. So they wanted the Rebbe should sit. So they created a bridge from the front
That was the
to
reason?
the middle.
Or they wanted to be able to hear?
That they wanted to hear is what they told the Rebbe.
The Kavanah was
Their
the
cheshbon was, I mean, maybe the cheshbon was both. If the Rebbe stands in the middle of the shul, then of course more people would hear. If the Rebbe is standing in the corner, everybody's pushing towards the corner, but how many can hear? If the Rebbe stands by his Farbrengen place, but also the kavanah was that the Rebbe should maybe sit. Because the Rebbe had then something by his foot, and which I didn't know exactly what's going on. Later I heard and found out things, but so they wanted the Rebbe should sit. So they created with plywood a bridge from the front of the shul to the Farbrengen Bime. After the davening, the Rebbe walked across, and the Rebbe came to his place, and there was a chair there. So the Rebbe asked, where is the stender? The Rebbe didn't want to sit down like a Farbrengen. Wasn't a Farbrengen, it's a Siche. So the Rebbe ended up saying the Siche was supporting himself, holding his fists, Yad of HaKadoshim, on the table, which actually made it difficult for the Rebbe. The Rebbe's knuckles turned white. You were able to see this was a strain. I stood mamish near the Rebbe, like 3-4 people. Everybody stood close to them. Not like by Farbrengen where there was more space. Everybody stood. You can see there's a video of Matzah Shabbos, Matzah Yom Tov. Everybody stood close. I stood very close, and I heard those siches also. But I was able to see the whole time how the effect on the Rebbe's hands, and that was the next night. They just brought the stender there, so the Rebbe said it already by a stender.
Meanwhile, the next day, the Rebbe stood for hours watching everyone.
That was incredible. Bechlal, it came Sukkos in the morning. The Rebbe would come out, I don't remember exactly what time, 8, 8:15, 8:30 to Shakul Lulav in the Sukkah. Then the Rebbe would give out the aluminum. So if you wanted to be there early so that you can be 10 o'clock in the shul with the Rebbe, already shook the Rebbe's Lulav, so there was a system with numbers, you got tickets.
Someone just sent me a picture of
a number of a ticket. Yeah,
and he sent me.
I stood online. I was from the first 150, 200 guys. So we stood like already in line, like by the Tashlich area, and then Shushking is going around. The Rebbe is there. The Rebbe is there. Nobody understood. Well, what do you mean the Rebbe is there? We couldn't see. We were outside the sukkah. The Rebbe is there. And slowly people like heard. The Rebbe is standing there while people are going through. It was like, man greet sich gar anders. Ich meine, dem Rebbe's Lulav is eiche dem Rebbe's Dalet Minim. You prepared, you learned Chassidus. But the Rebbe himself should stand there. And you had to say, Antilas Lulav, and Shechiyanu. But when I turned into the sukkah, I tried to see how is the Rebbe standing, and the Rebbe actually stood like a little bit leaning back, and the Rebbe didn't look strict. It's nicht gewesen kein ernster Cook. Verkehrt. It was like a loving. The Rebbe looked at each one. I only saw like 2-3 people before me, but I saw how the Rebbe is standing, watching. It was very, very unique. You didn't often see the Rebbe that way. Usually in public, the Rebbe was always very serious. Amol, you would see the Rebbe smile. The Rebbe smiled, the whole 770 lit up. I remember the shluchim to Russia came back. I don't remember exactly when it was. So it was
For the Svarim.
even the Svarim, yeah. It was Shlomo Kunin and Val Levin. They stood there near the Aron Kodesh, and like the Rebbe came in. The Rebbe gave a smile. It was like it was Amor Ponim. One time I saw the Rebbe smile at Zalman Jaffe. That wasn't common. Most times, at least in those years, the Rebbe was usually very serious, and after davening, the Rebbe would turn around, ernster Kuk, and here the Rebbe stood very gelassen, and the Rebbe ended up standing there for hours and hours, around 6 hours. It's hard to understand. It's like, was ich gewend der Rebbe's Kavanah? Ich weiß nicht, gar nicht. Wir paschete Menschelach. The Rebbe walked down to Shul, Shachris, Musaf, and then Mincha. A label asked the Rebbe if he should go get the Schlappe. The Rebbe told him,
Mincha.
For Mincha. The Rebbe down Mincha with the talus.
Talus.
Very, the Rebbe writes, there's Igris from the Rebbe about it, Pikabola, Pizeya. The Rebbe down Mincha with the talus. By the time it was over, it was like close to 6 o'clock. Everybody ran to make Kiddush, and soon you had to come back already for Ma'ariv, second night of Yontif. That was so all those chevra that came and shackled lulav at 11, at 12, at 1. I was done. I was after shackling lulav at 9 o'clock. Had a whole day. Sat in the sukkah, Glan Chitas, and Rambam, and Amaymer, and Asiche. You didn't know when is this going to end. When is the Rebbe going to go down? To start davening before the Rebbe.
What was the Eilim saying then? No,
nothing. It was just.
It was a fact.
A fact. That's it.
Because people, in hindsight, say,
but at the time, people started saying, that in the earlier years that was actually the Seder. So that I heard some of the ältere Chassidim talk about that he used to go into the Rebbe Sukkah and Shakaluv, but okay, fine, but that's not the Seder for years. Now, what happened now? Even then, it wasn't like this. It wasn't like that the Rebbe stood and watched everybody. The Rebbe stood and learned Amaymer. The Rebbe did other things. The Rebbe didn't watch the Chassidim Shakaluv.
B'chlal, those years, Nav and Beis, when you look, when you watch the videos, and there seems to be like an urgency by the Rebbe. But were you able? Is that what you were feeling then, or this was? We all know in hindsight we could see.
No, not only in hindsight. Look, many people didn't pay attention to certain things. Anybody who had a little bit seichel, anybody who had a little bit of hergish, felt uneasy. It's not like I was worried, but there were some things that were unusual. Lamashal, the Rebbe Shmini Atzeres said a siche after Ma'ariv. Leil Shmini Atzeres. The Rebbe said the Teish Nas Eirav Bracha like Erev Yom Kippur Shmini Atzeres. And the Rebbe said Shnas by Pei, Shnas Peh, Dibur Bepeh, like Shnas Peh, like that wasn't usual. The Pei stood for Shnas Pedus, was Shnas Peh, Dibur Bepeh, like. Now, of course, that we didn't understand at the time. That only Chavzayin Oder, when the Dibur was affected, we chapped then about that. But already at the time was like, what does that mean? Like, what is that? That was, now I didn't hear the Sikha, because I stood at my Hakofef's place already, which was closer to the center of the shul, to see the first and seventh Hakofef. But afterwards, Chazorah, I heard what the Rebbe said, and I was like, not sure what it is. Shnas Peh, nobody knew exactly how to explain it, but that's what the Rebbe said. Then later, Gimel Shvat, the Rebbe said the Sikha, about the Dibur, from the Sidereinu, medaf Mashlim Zayin. So, the Rebbe was dragging his foot a bit, schlepping a fuss in Yenet Tkufa. So, the Rebbe is talking about the Gesund of the Rebbe, maybe that's what it is.
People right away said that?
Yeah. Bachrim and all the Torah, we Levi Azimov, Tamula, and Chazar and the Rebbe's Maimorim Balpeh. We got an answer from the Rebbe for it. There was a Aiserus, not Gedet.
Wasn't there also a thing about Duchis of Psuris Tevis then?
I don't remember exactly what, but the whole winter of Nun Beis, starting already from Shabbos Noach. Shabbos Noach, the Rebbe spoke about the Hidur in Kiddush Levana. And one of the inyanim of Kiddush Levana that the Rebbe stressed is that it says Gulefa Gesund. And the Rebbe started using the term Aneshama Bria Beguf Bori Bli Hefsek Ben Time. The Rebbe started saying that one Fabring, another Fabring, the third, like, what is this? Every Fabring, the Rebbe Pasha started talking about Neshama Bria Beguf Bori Bli Hefsek Ben Time again and again. You know, if somebody just didn't think and didn't listen, he didn't realize, but Chassidim started being concerned about that. There was a concern. And then came the Sicha of Gimel Shvat, so that just raised the antenna. And then came Chedesh Adar. The Rebbe started speaking almost every single night. Kipshute. And what was the Rebbe saying? Every night, the Rebbe spoke about Shishim Yoim, Mevatlim, Dvarim Bilti Retzuim, Neshama Bria, Beguf Bori, Bli Hefsek Ben Time. At that point, you had to be mamish dull not to realize that there is that there's Dvarim Bilti Retzuim that need to be in this battle. Now, nobody expected Chav Zayin Adar to happen. No, Bechlal, everybody was living with the Shturim, Otot Kum Mashiach.
At the same time the Rebbe speaking with Mashiach.
So
like this.
we didn't think that Chas v'Shalom something's going to happen to the Rebbe and this and that, because, you know, Mashiach kommt. But Leidach Gisse, bis zu der Kretschme, till Mashiach comes with Peil, weißt du that there are some Menis Ve'ikuvim. Now, we were aware that the Rebbe's Gesund is not perfect. They're on the foot and this and that. So, you know, the Rebbe would come into Shul, and sometimes the Rebbe would like sway a little bit as he was walking. So it was visible. You were able to see certain things. So, okay. So the Rebbe is talking about our goof body. Nobody expected what happened in Chav Zayin Adar, but that there was an unease and that something is in the air. Yeah, Chassidim picked up on that at the time. So hat man gemacht Ashturim, Kiddush Levana, man gemacht Ashturim, the Rebbe's Teire, and the Chazar the Maimorim. So there was a big Shturim. Chav Zayin Adar happened, so that's when we realized, okay, that's...
You hear that whole tkufa after
Yeah.
Chav Zayin Adar?
Yeah. I went on Shlichus to Brinois in Tafshin on Beis, Cheshvan on Beis. We actually got dollars from the Rebbe. Rabbi Krinsky asked the Rebbe that the Kvutza is going on Shlichus to Brinois. He came out, he gave us dollars for each of us. We went on Shlichus the night when the Rebbe came out the last time on the porch. That's when we flew to Brinois.
So Nun Daled.
Nun Daled. Beginning of Nun
Nun
Daled.
Daled, not the best. So, what do you want to say about that tkufa?
Lo Yazer is Tzei Marisei, and we have a Rebbe.
No, I'm saying...
There isn't much... which tkufa? When we were on Shlichus?
After Chav Zayin Adar.
After Chav Zayin Adar. After Chav Zayin Adar, man gesagt Tillim, und man hat gelernt im Rebbe's Teire, with a special, Chalukis, Teiras Rabbeinu, all the yeshivas together, we made a Magaloi Lomi, and all kinds of things like that. Man hat sich gekocht in Rebbe's Inyanim, Mifzoim, Yud Aleph Nissen, Tishim Shana was, so from beforehand, it was already building up, Tishim Shana. So so it still happened. There was a big parade, tanks, and we made. Personally, I worked together with Elinas and Silverberg on the Kavitz Alatera. So it was a nice sefer that came out. I remember we worked through the night to have it ready for Yud Aleph Nissen. Also, the years before, we made Svarim. But, these were the things that mat gelebt. And it added a special Sturm because Van Rebbe's gesund. Everything is done. Van Rebbe's gesund. I don't know how controversial I should go, but da reden in gute Sachen, an teuchendige Inyanim. What was the Rebbe's expectation of a chassid, of a bocher in Tem Chetmimim? I remember in the Tkufa, that winter of Nun Beis, starting already from Chavchas Nissen, in Nun Aleph, in the Sturm of Mashiach started as they. So there were a lot of ideas in Yonim and Kabbalas HaMalchus that you have to write into the Rebbe, that you're accepting the Rebbe as a Melech HaMashiach. So Alatera was also getting into that. There was a whole Tamula made that one night all the Bachrim should come with Big the Shabbos, and there's going to be drashes from different mashpiyim, and everybody's going to together sign a Kabbalas HaMalchus. I remember Beshaite that there was Rabbi Yisrael Friedman and also Rabbi Galitsky, Ageshet lange Jahr. They were uncomfortable with that. Michael Mashmalon. A fremder Mensch schreibt zum Rebbe, a stammer person wants to write, he's mekabel there. A chassid? Of course you're a chassid. You mekabel the Rebbe's mouth, and yesterday you weren't. He wasn't your melech. Like
what changed?
Like what changed?
That we need to do this.
He felt that not only that this is not something appropriate, it's like bad. It's a chutzpah to schreiben zum Rebbe. What are you writing to the Rebbe such a thing? You mekabel him as a melech. Good morning. It was like, as young Bachrim, what do they understand? What do they? But Lemaise, there was this big Tamula, and everybody was all excited. Emot geschrieben and gechasmet and Kabbalas HaMalchus. And then nothing. They were looking and waiting. Is the Rebbe going to be Misyaches? They wrote to the Rebbe, Duch, mat geschrieben, the whole yeshiva got together, and there was a big Verbringen, and mat gerett wegen dem Teichner Inyan, and this, and everybody. No answer. Reb Nachman went every day to Label's office. No, she loves an answer. No answer. No answer. And there was no answer. There was no isyachs from the Rebbe to it. You look in how the Rebbe spoke with the whole Sturm of Mashiach. Dark Chassidus don't change. Was man sich von a Chassid, was man sich von a Bocher in Tem Chetmimim. Right after Chavches Nissen, already the Rebbe answered, I think was to Chaim Gutnik. I spoke clear by Farbrengen, and this was even before the Rebbe said to learn in Yon Gula Mashiach. Teira and mitzvahs. This is no new Teira and mitzvahs. Latakis eitzes. What are you going to do to bring Mashiach? It doesn't mean to. We need to come up with one more gimmick, and that's going to bring Mashiach.
I remember Yeshver once spoke.
Yeah.
When I was in Yeshiva Maristan, and they had questions and answers, and there was a whole community there. So there was men and women, obviously benefited.
Yeah.
But there were questions being sent in. So one of the women sent in a question that the Rebbe said a sicha, Chav Ches Nissen, do all you can to bring Mashiach. So what else is left? And she So your Shver said Teira and mitzvahs.
Huh?
So
Baruch shekivanti. But where did I see that strong? So I was close to Rav Galitsky, so sein gesund und stark. I was working in Horace Biurim. It reminds me a cute thing. One Farbrengen that Rebbe mentioned about Gal Yisrael, that we don't say Amen because that's the Mismach Gula Tefillah. So, and the best way how to accomplish that is if you conclude Gal Yisrael, if the Chazan concludes it quietly, so then there's no answering Amen. So somebody wrote in the Ha'aretz U'Biurim, if that means that we need to change our minhag, the Rebbe said this by Farbrengen and Shabbos, but a minhag Chabad is that the Chazan says it loud, just nobody answers Amen, we start Shemini Esrei.
You say it with the Chazan, no?
You say it with the Chazan, yeah. So, I remember I was a Chavar HaMareches, so I wrote Ha'aras HaMareches, that what the Rebbe said, I'm thinking about it now, the Rebbe is good chance gonna see this, because the Rebbe would read the Ha'aras. Ich gehe schreiben in Ha'aras what the Rebbe meant, but yeah, I was young and I didn't have so much... so I wrote, it had to pass Rav Galitsky's approval. So I wrote that what the Rebbe said by Farbrengen doesn't mean that the minhag changes because of that. The Rebbe was talking in concept. So this inyan, the best way how to accomplish it is, it's not our minhag, but B'Peil, if the Chazan said it quietly, then you cannot answer Amen. Yeah. That's just, it's an inyan geret. So I remember Rav Galitsky was looking at, okay, yeah, he let it go. And it was printed that way in Ha'aretz. There was no Yachzus from the Rebbe or anything. But I'm thinking back to that today,
On the other hand, though, the Rebbe did say, let's say Chaisara Numbez, the Rebbe said that there must be, that there's something different that we need to do, that we didn't do till now.
So, the Rebbe spoke to Bachrim, exclusively to Bachrim, when? Yechidus Latmimim, after Tishrei. You would expect that whole summer, the Rebbe, Shabbos after Shabbos, stürmt wegen Mashiach. And into Nun Beis as well. And now he's talking to the Bachrim. No, you would expect that for the Bachrim also he's going to talk. Mashiach for Bachrim. What was the Rebbe talking to the Bachrim about? For half an hour, long Yechidus. Unusual. A half an hour the Rebbe is talking about Limud HaTorah, Nigle mit Pilpule de Reise, to the extent as Mecholem Tchidush Torah. What is the Rebbe want from a Bacher in Tafshin on Beis? Nothing else than what he wanted from the Bacher in Tafshin Yud and Yud Aleph and Yud Beis and Tafshin Chof and Alle Yoren. What is Mashiach? What is Mashiach? Some people have all kinds of images, childish images. That's what they imagine. Mashiach is Gilui Lekus. Mashiach is... What does that mean? That's Limud HaTorah. Exactly. So from a Bacher has no excuses. For him, straight Mashiach. Limud HaTorah, Yom V'Layla, in mitten Nacht cholim sich Mashiach.
Right, even the Chaisaron and Beis, the Rebbe said that all of the Inyanim should be permitted with the Nakud of Mashiach.
Exactly.
But which Inyanim?
Exactly. What did the Rebbe say about that Farbrengen? The Rebbe is talking to Shluchim. What? Mesayim dein the Chassidische Parsha every year. Terei Likutei Torah. Saying, that's outdated. Lubavitch Rebbe, what are you talking about? What are we, back in the Chof suddenly? There's no... Chassidus beit sich nicht. There's the same Chassidus. If you want, you can see it in another Inyan as well. The Rebbe, in Nun Aleph, Nun Beis, those who were here in those years, have something that the Chassidim that were by the Rebbe in all the other years don't have. And that is a bookshelf of Kuntreisim and Sfarim they got from the Rebbe. The Rebbe gave out a whole library. Tanyas, Kitzurim V'Oris, Maimorim of all the Rebbeim Kimat. Now, a Tanya, but the Rebbe gave out these Kuntreisim. The Rebbe said, Kuntras Eitz Chaim. The Rebbe spoke Shabbos by Farbrengen, that this is not meant to soll liegen. Lilmeid, Alminas Lasseis, Daf Leben. What is Kuntras Eitz Chaim? Yichude Tatoin, Yichude Ilah, and how to implement it in our lives. And then some of the Maimorim, the Rebbe gave a Kuntris Maimorim Tafresh Pei Beis. 3 Maimorim of the Friedige Rebbe of Tafresh Pei Beis, Tishrei Tafshin Rosh Hashanah, Shabbos Shuvah. These are deep Maimorim. Baruch Shas und Nissim Samach Dalet, Maimorim von Rebbe nicht mal sehen. A deep Haskaldige Maimor, even from the Rebbe's own Maimorim. You know, Ato Tetzave, that's a Maimor everyone can learn. Chav Cheshvan, Nun Beis, the Rebbe gave out Kuntris Chav Cheshvan, it's a Maimor from Tafshin Lamed, Vayu Chai Yisara. This is a deep Haskaladige Maimor. This is a heavy-duty Maimor. The Rebbe is giving this to Anoshim, Noshim V'Taf. Chsidim Anu Bameh. A Chosid learned Chsidis. There is no new Chsidis. There is no other Chsidis. And that is Mashiach. You learn the Rebbe's Torah, you learn that. Now, of course, I'm not saying that's... like they said about the Ketz and Tafresh Ches, it's what's chagedruckt alle Kutte Teire. Of course, the Rebbe wanted Mashiach bepeil in Elam Hazat Achten, Lemat Masot Fachim. But for a Chassid, that doesn't mean gimmicks. You're
saying to bring Mashiach.
Yeah, to bring Mashiach. This is how you bring Mashiach bepeil. So, of course, you have to learn it yourself and live with it.
And the Rebbe did give...
with emes, with the Gila Elikus that you get from learning Chassidus.
different quote-unquote eitzes, the Heisem Mashiach, but they're all in Yanim. They weren't new. They were like, whatever, the Kachan, Kiddush Levana, and different Yanim.
Yeah, there is no new Teira,
there's no new mitzvahs. It's not a Matan Teira with Tzveitim on the design, right?
Yeah, so obviously, learning in Yanagul Mashiach, we had a major Kach in that, and we still do. You learn the Rebbe's Teira, the Rebbe gave out, this 4 Siches, Mashiach, Dvar Malchus, which that in itself also, the Rebbe is handing out Dvar Malchus to everyone, which obviously was also a big... but even those siches are tiefe siches. Yeah. And this is how we're mekusha to the Rebbe. We have to learn the Rebbe's Torah, learn the Rebbe's siches, and when you learn them correctly, you understand why we need Mashiach. So then when you meet another Yid, the Mashiach that you bring to another Yid is the Rebbe's Mashiach, not some fantasy Mashiach. Mashiach is Gilui Lakus. Hey, the Mashiach is going to come. Oh, there's going to be stuff growing on the trees. Yeah, the Rebbe talks about this in the Sichos too, of course. But that's what, like you quoted before, you have to be able to share that with another Yid. So first of all, you have to live that way yourself. Nafsham Ika, Vegufam Tafel. There's no shortcuts. The same Chassidus that existed for all the years from the Baal Shem Tov, from the Alter Rebbe, throughout all the generations of Nasi Yichama. That same Chassidus is, and that is what the Rebbe expects from Bochrim, that's what the Rebbe expects from Anash, Leben mitten Rebbe.
So let me ask you, you were talking specifically to Bochrim, or about Bochrim, but I know that you're also very involved with Yungalite, because you teach Chasanim and answer Shailas. I myself learned in Yana by you. So what's a message for Yungalite to those that are establishing families or have raising young families?
Same thing, same message. You got to live with the Rebbe. And there's another nekuda which I think is also very, very important. The Arum from Chassidus. You know, knowing the Rebbe's Tildes Chayav. Baruch Hashem, today you don't have to go digging. Everything is available. Gem, also the Her made available a lot of the Our Days and the monthly magazine filled with, Pashat, the Lachluchis, the Chassidische, the Her, the Arum of Chassidus. But that a bocher or a younger man should not be baki in the early years. The book that Gem produced, which I hope they'll do a chelik sheni from the chasana at least till Tafshin Yud. But I've haben the hemshech of the early years. But all this information that we didn't know. When I was a bocher, Yemei Melech came out. Yemei Melech, was a lot of things. Some of it was based on something, some of it was just hearsay. It's hard to tell always, but of course, there's a lot of information there. It's started already. Reb Nissen Gordon interviewed Rebbe Tzachane and published in the Yiddish Heim, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, about the Rebbe's childhood and so on. A Chassid darf doch wissen. Reb Nissen Nemenov, he had all kinds of Bachrim, Sfardische Bachrim, Marokkaner Bachrim that came to Brunwa. They didn't speak Yiddish, they didn't know Dark Chassidus. So he made a point that they all have to read through Likutei Diburim. You have to be Baki in Likutei Diburim. He said, imagine an army. When they take in soldiers, you need to know the history of the country you're fighting for. You have to know the history. So that you have to know Likutei Diburim. Al derech zeh, every Chassid, a Chassid should not know the details of the Rebbe's life. And in the years of the Nesias, for sure, but even before the Nesias, it's dein Tate, the Rebbe. You don't know where he was, where he was born, where he traveled, what years, what were his activities in his Bachrische Jahren, after the Chasna. How can you not know these things? This is your Rebbe. So I think that these things are very, very important, and especially that today you don't have to go looking for it. It's all available, nicely packaged, easily available. That is very important, besides for learning the Rebbe's Torah.
Yeah, I would say also that there's obviously learning the Rebbe's Torah that goes without a question. If you're a Lubavitcher Chassid, you know Torah's Rabbeinu. But there's another part to this. There's the Tildes and just the basic facts, which that Taka Der and Gem and other places that you can have access to it. But another thing which is similar is also like what the Rebbe has to say about certain topics. And so
knowing the Rebbe's Hashkafas.
Yeah, Hashkafas. I know you, something that we worked together with you on was when we wrote an article about family planning.
Correct.
Or lack of family planning, about having large mishpachas.
The Rebbe's view.
The Rebbe's view on it, yeah. And no, I remember when we were creating it. I remember even for myself, which I'm the one that's, doing it. But I'm like, it helped me have a better understanding. And I watched the sichos before and I knew about it, but you have it packaged and fresh and the whole thing from beginning to end. It's like
I remember at the time that you guys got some flack for it, and I was saying then, what do you mean?
We got flack because some people felt that it's not
appropriate
for Bachrim
to read.
Right.
And I said then, and you said, I wrote that Pesachtical response then. 40 years before the Rebbe spoke about this, by Farbrengen, in public, in front of Bachrim and children, the Rebbe had no problem. So you want to tell me that 40 years later, the world pushed the Gevar mer oisgeedelt, they're not kalim for this.
Right.
Elamai, they should only know what the street has to say about it. If they're not going to learn about this, when they're not going to read this in the Deher, when they are Bachrim, just like any topic in Yiddishkeit, in life, that a chassid needs to know, was sagt der Rebbe wegen them? When are you going to find out? When you're 50?
Right.
You're not going to find out. Learning never ends, and nobody should think that whatever they read in their Bachrische years, in the Derher, that's it. So now they know everything about the Rebbe. Of course, there's always more and more. It's Yam she'en lo soif. The Rebbe's Torah is the Chmamish Aruchem Eretz Midah, and it's a Pele Gadol. His stuff is coming out, new Hagois and new Meines and new days. We're talking about already more than 3 decades after Gimel Tammuz, and there's constantly new Inyanim Nizgale. The Rebbe spoke in Tafshin Yud. Michtav mi aliyos, kommt on. The Rebbe schickt, Baruch Hashem, the Yazev Tzei Marisei. But a chassid needs to know the Rebbe's views on topics. Now Shleimus Oretz. Yeah, you hear chassidim sometimes say things about Shleimus Oretz. Pashas reißt the Herz. The Rebbe hat sich ausgegossen the Herz years and years. Pasha, literally, not a guzme, for hundreds of hours. The Rebbe bei Farbrengen hat sich ausgegossen, hat geschrien. And the Rebbe's view of Shleimus Haaretz is one of the topics. There is so much from the Rebbe on it that a chassid should say things that Pasha totally against the Rebbe's outlook. He doesn't mean anything. He Pasha is clueless.
For example?
There's no excuse for that. That's nicht in examples. But can have another podcast on Shleimus Haaretz. But everybody knows, people will repeat views that are written on websites or all kinds of other sources, and they'll, that makes sense, and they'll repeat it without even realizing, Lamashal, talking now about the latest news, that America is paving the way for maybe in the future a Palestinian state. Okay, he says, meint gar nicht. Stam die Burim bei allem. The Palestinians are not going to behave anyway, so it's never going to happen. That's not how the Rebbe viewed this. Even autonomy, the Rebbe said that just talking about that is a sakone for Yidden. How can a Lubavitcher say things that are mamish against the Rebbe's view? And by the way, the whole topic of Shleimus Haaretz, this is not a topic of Emunah. You don't need it. It's not like, the Rebbe's view, okay, so, I'm Moedim, Chachomim, Rab Meir, I bow my head, the Rebbe said different, okay. The Rebbe's shit, that's the only shit that makes sense. That's the only shit that... Especially maybe that... been proven in the lab hundreds times over.
Right, maybe
at
then...
At this point, if anybody doesn't, you still didn't get it, right? Unfortunately, there are many Yidden who didn't get it. But that Lubavitcher Chassidim shouldn't get it. The Rebbe sat by Farbrengen, hat sich ausgegossen der Herz, hundreds of hours, and you don't bother to find out the Rebbe's views. And Baruch Hashem, there's many Kalim today. There's the Sefer that put all the sichos just together, the Karasi Vein Eine. There's this book from, what's his name? Pearl made the book.
Yeah, Make Peace, in English.
And there's plenty of resources. All you have to do is find out. Make it your business to learn what is the Rebbe's shit in Shleimus Haaretz. And the Rebbe, why did the Rebbe speak about this? Why did the Rebbe speak by Farbrengen? People have these weird machshavas, weird questions. Like, what did the Rebbe think? He's going to be poiled by talking to Chassidim? We don't need a Pesach Maise that somebody said, that the Rebbe said, make sure not to do achsa shtachim in Aveda. Of course, that's emes too. There's actually a sichim sichas chelik yud breishes that is the theme of the personal, the least im atem. No, you have to stand strong on your land, but no, there's also teaching. Das Teure, was sagt Teure, was ist der Emes wegen die Inyanim? Everybody has to know that. What kind of question? Why the Rebbe spoke about this? And why the Rebbe screamed when he spoke about it? And like the Rebbe said himself, tut weh schreitman. So a Chassid should contemplate, is the Rebbe right? And you don't begin to understand. The Pashut, you don't know. So there's no excuse for that. That's why the Rebbe wanted also Igris to be printed. Why did the Rebbe want Igris to be printed? It's a muge, the move, Chelik Yud Beis, and the Rebbe says, klar. I mean, it was written by 11, but the Rebbe allowed this to be printed like that, like the Alter Rebbe wrote it, Tanya. Yeah. It's, so a younger man, as a bacher, you'll get a lot of information, but you're still a bacher. A teenager, in the Maimah to the Bar Mitzvah, say Meichen the Gadlus, Shleimus HaMeichen by Bar Mitzvah. Aber Beneinu Geret, maybe it's today's day and age, I don't know what, it takes a few more years for the mind to fully ripen. And Lemaise, in the teenage years, even a smart bacher, he learns a lot in this, but to really get it, we're not fully getting it. We always realize more oimkim, so we have to continue learning, and there's always more that you don't know yet. But to Pashut know what the Rebbe's views on all kinds of topics, everyone has to have a quiz learning the Rebbe's Igris. You have to know. And if you encounter a topic and you don't know what the Rebbe, so this mafteich is, look it up, find out, ask somebody who knows. Don't start talking things that you heard on some radio show or some podcast from the chitzoniske Welt.
It's also not only...
You can't stop
you're talking about
with shittas kezvis.
You're talking about global stuff, whatever. national.
But
national,
even individual
no,
stuff,
but even
like
individual
you said,
stuff.
like family planning. Some people, I want to have children, of course, but what's wrong? I'm gonna have to spread out, like all kinds of views like that. What do you mean? You don't know the Rebbe's view?
Many times the answer is no. They heard once about it, but they don't really know. It's not fresh. It's not something that they
gotta reprint it, make another run in the.
First of all, anyone could read it at index.theher.org. But
and also you sent it to me as a PDF. I share it with Chsanim that I teach.
You're still doing it.
Still doing it.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. So I think someone gave me an idea over the Kindles that maybe you should make take 3 people at any time there's like a major something happening in the news that fortunately or unfortunately people know about. You should be able to right away present what the Rebbe says about it. So, I mean,
a think tank.
A think tank, yeah. But the idea is
not everything.
The concept is good.
Not everything needs to be official.
No, the idea.
Well, I'm all in nuance. Everybody can make a mistake,
right?
And so it doesn't have because it puts a certain pressure. If you make it an official, so they're the know-it-all. So they represent the Rebbe's shitta.
Right.
I don't know if that's such a great idea, but on the personal level, yeah. Ask somebody, he knows a bit more than you, and maybe there's something from the Rebbe on it.
Someone gave me a good dogma that on October 7th, on Simchas Torah, then, Bei Bayim, it was very clear to everyone what the response, every Shliach around the world, whatever, it was very clear what the response is. You have to continue, whatever. Someone was telling me,
that was in our blood.
Right. There was no memo that went out from headquarters. That's in the blood. Everyone knew right away. Just being
I actually, afterwards, everybody came with the Sikha from the Rebbe, the Yom Kippur War. I knew about that. So I actually, by Hakofis already,
you said that.
I told the Eilam that, I didn't hear anything about it till the Bachrim from the Oil came on Talucha to me.
Right.
My son and others that came on Talucha. And we didn't hear a word. They told us about this. And right away, it put like a damper. Everybody found out, the whole Eilam. And this.
But that's a good example of the way we should be approaching everything.
Everything. If we have it in our bones already, then we will react by default in the Rebbe's cook, in the Rebbe's gang.
Okay, thank you very much, and halavai yifelu bi b'Hashemim, and very good.
Yashakech Gadol, and you should be mamshich and have hatzlacha rabu muflaga in your Avedis Hakedesh. I can't begin, and certainly not end, in the shvachim and the praise for this whole mifal that the Herr was bringt da rein in chassidische Heiser, a poshet chassidische der Herr. How many Chassidim grow up mit dem Chassidischen der Herr, von dem Chassidischen der Herr?
Okay.
Lechaim, asach nacht, asach hatzloche, and Mashiach soll schon kommen, bepeil mamisch, lematem asach tvochen, soll sich sein mit dem Reben.
Amen.